Hey guys, tonight we slip softly back through time, back to a world of marble columns and olive groves, where sandals slap against dusty stone streets and the air carries the sound of bleating goats. You're not just watching this world from the outside, you're stepping right into it. Ancient Greece, in all its rawness and glory, is about to become your home for a day. The only problem is, you probably won't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like sharing, let me know your location and what time it is where you are. It's always fun to see where we're traveling from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake at dawn in Athens, in a cramped, stone-walled house that has more in common with a storage shed than anything you'd call cozy. The floor beneath you is hard-packed earth, cool and slightly damp, the kind of surface that leaves your joints creaking when you sit up. Overhead, the roof is a patchwork of wooden beams and clay tiles, some cracked enough to let the faintest line of early light slip through. The smell hits you first. Not coffee, not toast, not anything warm or inviting, but the mingled scents of old olive oil, musty wool, and yesterday's bread left too long in the air. It's not that people here don't notice odors, just that they don't expect the world to smell particularly fresh. Perfume is a rare luxury. Soap, as you know it, doesn't exist, and even the richest households carry with them the unmistakable undertone of smoke and sweat. You hear the clatter of pottery before you see it. Someone in the next room drops a jug, curses softly, then sweeps the shards aside with a clay-bristled broom. The house is small, just a couple of rooms centered around a courtyard that doubles as kitchen, workshop, and living space. Privacy is not something you'll ever really experience here. Walls are thin, doors are flimsy, and every cough or sigh carries easily from one chamber to the next. You rise slowly, your feet finding the rough weave of a mat. No slippers, no socks, just bare skin against the chill of the floor. It feels grounding, in a way, though a tiny rock wedge makes you question how much grounding you really need. A thin woolen blanket slips from your shoulders as you stand. Wool scratches, even when it's been softened, and the Greeks use a lot of wool. Cotton hasn't yet reached these shores, and silk is still the prize of distant, exotic lands. The air is alive now with morning activity. Roosters crow. A donkey brays from down the street. A neighbor shouts at another, arguing over water from the communal fountain. You rub your eyes, trying to adjust to the dim grey light of early morning. The day ahead looms long. One mainstream fact: life in Athens begins with the rhythm of daylight. People rise with the sun and shape their hours around it, since candles and oil lamps are too precious to waste for much more than a short flicker after dark. You, like everyone else, are expected to move with the sun's pace. A quirky tidbit slips into your awareness as you shuffle toward the doorway. The Greeks often believed dreams weren't just idle brain activity, but messages from gods or glimpses of fate. If you had a strange dream, say, of riding a goat backwards into the sea, might spend half the morning seeking out someone to interpret it. And yes, goat dreams were apparently a thing. Historians still argue whether these early morning rituals of dream interpretation were deeply believed by everyone, or whether they were more of an amusing side practice for the curious. But here, as you glance at the neighbor muttering about his dream of serpents in a fig tree, it's clear that at least some people take them very seriously. You yawn, stretching, your arms brushing against the rough wall as you steady yourself. Hunger gnaws faintly, but breakfast is still a little while off. The light outside shifts from grey to pale gold, casting a soft glow on the uneven cobblestones of the street. It's a city waking up, voices rise, sandals slap, and you catch the faint, metallic temps of bronze as a smith hammers at his forge down the road. You're expected to step out soon, to live as they do. But even now, in this dawn moment, you feel it, the ancient rhythm, slower, heavier, rougher than the life you left behind. You take a breath. It smells of smoke, dust, and something faintly sour. No lattes, no bagels, no quick shower to rinse off the night, just you and a world that demands endurance. Asterisk, you shuffle into the courtyard, hoping to find some semblance of freshness to wash away the stickiness of sleep. The sky above is clearing now, pale blue streaked with the last traces of dawn. A clay basin rests near the wall, half filled with water drawn yesterday. The surface is film thin, dust already clinging in swirls. It's not exactly the spa experience you were hoping for. Bathing in this world is not the everyday ritual you're accustomed to. Soap, as you think of it, hasn't been invented here yet. Instead, you're given oil, of course, and a curved bronze tool called a strigil. The idea is simple. Smear yourself with oil, then scrape it off, along with sweat, dust, and whatever else has decided to stick to your skin. It works in its way, though the process leaves you smelling faintly like a salad. You dip your hands in the basin. The water is shockingly cold, sending shivers darting up your arms. No heated showers here, no steam rising in the air. Just icy water that makes you gasp and blink awake. You splash your face, rub your eyes, and realize almost immediately that the water isn't particularly clean. Someone else used it first. Hygiene, in this world, is a communal affair. And clean is a flexible word. A mainstream fact anchors you. Athenians did visit public baths, but those were less about personal hygiene and more about social life. You'd gather there to talk politics, gossip, maybe even conduct business. Bathing at home was often quick, crude, and efficient. Soap substitutes ranged from ashes mixed with water to ground herbs, but none left you feeling quite the way modern suds do. A quirky tidbit drifts into your thoughts as you scrape oil across your forearm with a borrowed strigil. Some Greeks believed that applying certain oils could ward off illness or even evil spirits. A layer of oil wasn't just for cleanliness. It was thought to carry protective powers. In a pinch, crocodile dung mixed with oil was even touted as a skincare ingredient. Yes, crocodile dung. You glance down at your arm, thankful that today's supply seems to be strictly olive-based. Historians still argue whether these oiling practices were truly effective for health, or whether they served more symbolic purposes, ritual gestures that gave comfort even if they didn't fully sanitize. What's certain is that to live here is to accept a different definition of clean. You scrape again, wincing slightly at the rough metal against your skin. The oil, thick and slightly rancid, leaves behind a faint sheen. The process is awkward, messy, and not entirely satisfying. You feel less refreshed than coated. The courtyard smells faintly of smoke from the hearth, mingled with the sharp temps of olive oil warming under the morning sun. Nearby, a neighbor chuckles at your clumsy movements. He's already finished his routine, rubbing a bit of oil into his beard and combing it with a bone pick. He looks satisfied enough, though his tunic carries last night's stains and his feet are blackened from the dust of the street. You can't help but imagine how long you'd last here if you tried to enforce modern hygiene standards. No toothpaste, no daily showers, no deodorant, just oil, scraping, and the occasional dunk in a cold pool. You picture yourself trying to convince an ancient Greek about mouthwash and dental floss, and you can already hear the laughter. Still, there's a strange simplicity to it. No rows of shampoos, no endless skincare regimens, no frantic search for the perfect moisturizer. Just oil, scrape, repeat. The rhythm of it matches the rhythm of their lives. Practical, direct, slightly uncomfortable, but enough to get through the day. And so you finish, not refreshed exactly, but ready. Ready for woolen chitons, barley bread, and a city whose streets echo with sandals and arguments. You stand in the courtyard, dripping faintly with oil, the morning sun brushing against your skin, and you realize you are truly in their world now. You are truly in their world now. You stand in the courtyard, faintly slick from your less than glamorous bath, and it dawns on you that you can't exactly wander Athens in your blanket. Clothing in ancient Greece isn't complicated in terms of structure, but the rules surrounding it are another matter entirely. A pile of fabric lies waiting, rough, off-white wool, heavy despite its simple appearance. You tug at it, expecting something shaped like a shirt or tunic, but no, this is the kitten. It's essentially a large rectangle of cloth, pinned at the shoulders, belted at the waist, and draped down to the knees or ankles depending on your role, your gender, and, frankly, how much fabric you can afford. You try to drape it around yourself, fumbling with the pins called fibula. They're sharp, and you discover quickly that stabbing yourself with ancient safety pins is an authentic part of the morning routine. You cinch the belt around your waist, and the fabric hangs awkwardly, too long on one side, too short on the other. Somewhere, an Athenian tailor would be rolling his eyes if tailoring were really a thing here. But in truth, Greeks prize the art of drapery. A perfectly arranged fold can say as much about you as the cut of a modern suit. A mainstream fact comes to mind as you adjust the folds. Clothing in Greece was rarely dyed unless you were wealthy. White or natural tones dominate, with the occasional splash of purple reserved for the elite. Since the dye came from rare sea snails, wearing a lot of purple is like strutting around with a neon sign flashing, "I'm rich. Don't rob me." You stick with plain wool. It scratches, itches, and smells faintly like the sheep it came from. Because it did. Now comes the cloak, the himatayon, a heavier rectangle thrown over one shoulder. Its surprisingly versatile blanket, coat, privacy curtain, even makeshift bedding if you're stuck outdoors. You wrap it awkwardly, feeling less like a noble philosopher and more like someone who got tangled in a picnic blanket. A quirky tidbit trickles in. Some Greeks believed that the way you draped your himation revealed your character. Too loose, and you might be mocked as lazy or effeminate. Too tight, and you seemed stingy or uptight. There was even etiquette about which shoulder should be covered in certain contexts. You sigh, realizing you could easily be judged as morally questionable just by your sloppy folds. Historians still argue whether these clothing customs were strictly enforced across all of Athens, or whether they were more symbolic ideals pushed by philosophers who liked to tell people how to live. Either way, you now carry the constant pressure of wondering if your himation screams outsider. As you wrestle with the fabric, you can't help but notice the sensation. Itchy wool against skin, weight dragging at the shoulders, warmth building already under the rising sun. It's not exactly breathable activewear. You picture yourself in the gym, later wool plus sweat equals an ancient recipe for discomfort. And speaking of gym, you recall with dread that exercise here is performed in the nude, which suddenly makes sense. You glance at your reflection in a bronze mirror propped on a shelf. The surface is polished, but not perfectly, so your face ripples like a figure half submerged in water. You look strange, draped in uneven folds, hair unwashed, eyes bleary. But this is the Greek aesthetic. Simple, functional, natural. The idea of fashion trends is present, but it doesn't yet mean seasonal wardrobes or runway shows. It means subtle shifts in how fabric is arranged, what length you choose, or whether your cloak looks like it belongs to a respectable citizen or a ragged traveler. For footwear, sandals are weightless thongs strapped to the foot, thin soles offering little cushion from the cobblestones outside. You slip them on, grateful at least for something between you and the dusty earth. The straps cut slightly at the skin, leaving faint red lines. Comfort is not exactly high on the priority list. You are dressed now, ready to step into public life. You feel heavy, layered, and oddly exposed at the same time. Exposed, because all around you, people are trained to read meaning into every wrinkle and fold of your clothing. Heavy, because wool isn't exactly a featherweight textile. And yet, there's a certain solemnity to it. You belong, in a way, just another figure in the chorus of Athens, draped, sandaled, moving with the rhythm of stone and sunlight, still. You can't help but think of your closet back home, with its t-shirts, jeans, hoodies, and sneakers. Simple things, easy things. Things you don't need to pin with sharp bronze clips while half asleep. You sigh, tug your himatayan one more time, and step toward the door. Your stomach growls, which means it's time for breakfast, or at least the Greek version of it. You shuffle back into the courtyard, clothes adjusted enough to pass, sandals already dusted with earth. Your stomach twists, reminding you that food hasn't yet touched your lips today. But breakfast in Athens isn't the feast you might imagine. On a small wooden table sits a loaf of barley bread, dense, rough, and slightly sour. Wheat bread is for the rich, barley for everyone else. You break off a piece, the crust hard enough to challenge your teeth. It's chewy, earthy, and dry, the kind of food that demands a sip of water just to push it down. No butter, no jam, no steaming mug of coffee to wash it all away. Just barley bread, plain and unassuming. Next to the bread lies a small bowl of olives, black and glossy, their flavor sharp and briny. You bite into one, wincing at the bitterness, though the salt does wake you up a little. These are the staples of life here: bread, olives, and occasionally cheese. If fortune smiles on you, a mainstream fact frames the moment. Honey was the sweetener of choice in Greece. And it wasn't cheap. Beekeeping existed, and honey was praised as the nectar of the gods, but it was expensive. Enough that most households didn't drizzle it casually over breakfast. If you got honey, it was a treat, not a routine. You eye the table hopefully. No honey today. Instead, a small jug of watered-down wine sits nearby. Yes, even in the morning, wine is on the table. But don't imagine glasses of bold red Greeks almost always diluted their wine, mixing it with water until it was more of a flavored drink than a heavy indulgence. Drinking wine neat was considered barbaric, the kind of thing northern tribes might do. A quirky tidbit surfaces as you chew. Some Greeks swore by a breakfast of garlic and onions, eaten raw. The idea was that it gave strength and stamina, though it also guaranteed no one would want to stand too close to you. Garlic breath wasn't a social foe, pit was practically a badge of honor. You can only imagine how an Athenian gymnasium smelled after a dozen men fueled up on garlic. Historians still argue whether breakfast was a universal meal at all. Some sources suggest many Greeks simply skipped it, preferring a light snack later in the day. Others argue that barley bread and diluted wine were typical, with olives and figs when available. The evidence is thin, much like the meal itself. As you nibble at the bread, you picture a modern breakfast table: cereal, eggs, pancakes, endless flavors of coffee creamers. The contrast makes you chuckle softly. Here, if you want something sweet in the morning, you might nibble on dried figs or dates. Otherwise, it's bread, olives, and the faint hum of hunger reminding you not to expect too much. Still, there's something calming in the simplicity. No rush, no endless options to choose from, no scrolling menus or complicated lattes. Just what the land gives, plain and steady. Your jaw works at the bread, muscles straining against the toughness. And you realize this diet alone might defeat you long before Athens' politics or wars. 3 bites of bread, a handful of olives, a sip of watered wine. Breakfast is done. Simple, functional, and already fading from memory. You wipe your hands on your himation and stand. The city calls, its heart beating in the agora, the marketplace where Athens hums to life. You take a deep breath, olive pits rolling in a clay bowl behind you, and prepare to step into the crowded, noisy, dazzling center of Greek daily life. The streets stretch out before you, narrow and uneven, the stones worn smooth by centuries of sandals. Dust clings to the hems of your chiton, settling in the folds, no matter how carefully you try to lift the fabric. The air is already warming, though the morning is young. And with it comes the faint buzz of voices drifting from the heart of the city. The agora waits. You follow the flow of people, each one draped in folds of wool or linen, their sandals slapping rhythmically against the ground. Some carry baskets, others lead donkeys laden with goods. Children dart between adults, chasing each other through the labyrinth of streets, their laughter rising above the murmurs. A dog trots ahead of you, tongue lolling, tail wagging, as if even it knows where the morning leads. The smell arrives before the sight. Roasting meat mingled with the sharp attempts of fish, the sweetness of figs, the earthy aroma of bread fresh from the oven. By the time you step into the agora itself, your senses are overwhelmed. It is not a market in the tidy, modern sense. It is a living chaos. Merchants shout above each other, extolling the quality of their wares. Bronze tools gleam in the sun, amphorae of wine and oil-lined wooden stalls, and heaps of vegetables spill from baskets. Goats bleat, tethered to posts. Chickens cluck irritably, feathers ruffled as they await their fate. Somewhere a flute plays, the notes thin but bright, weaving between the noise. A mainstream fact grounds you. The agora was more than just a marketplace. It was the social and political hub of Athens, a place where goods changed hands. Yes, but also where ideas, gossip, and news were traded. Philosophers lingered on the edges, artisans displayed their skills, and citizens gathered to hear announcements. If you wanted to understand the pulse of the city, you came here. You pause near a stall where figs are piled high, their skins split slightly from ripeness. The vendor, his hands stained with juice, gestures enthusiastically, offering you a taste. The fruit is sweet, soft, and sticky, a welcome relief after the dryness of barley bread. You savor it, grateful, though you know your modern stomach is still silently petitioning for coffee. A quirky tidbit slides into the scene. Some of the street food here would raise eyebrows today. Fried fish heads, for example, were considered a delicacy by certain Athenians. Vendors sold them hot and crispy, seasoned with herbs, to be eaten right there in the square. You pass one such stall, the sizzling aroma drifting to your nose. You politely decline, unsure if crispy fish skull is on your personal menu. Historians still argue whether the agora was truly accessible to everyone. Women, in particular, were often expected to remain within the household, though poorer families might send them out for errands. Slaves, too, filled the marketplace, buying and selling on behalf of their masters. What you see around you a swirl of men, women, children, foreigners, traders, may not be the full reality, but rather the bustling face of a city layered with rules about who really belongs here. You wander further, weaving between stalls. A potter demonstrates his wheel, clay spinning beneath his hands as he coaxes it into shape. Nearby, a blacksmith hammers at glowing bronze, sparks flying with each strike. The noise is constant, but not chaotic. It has a rhythm, a heartbeat that seems to draw you along. Philosophers clustered near the steps of a stoa, their voices rising in animated debate. You can't catch every word, but phrases drift through. Justice, virtue, truth. Their gestures are grand, sweeping, as if they might sculpt the very air into argument. A small crowd gathers, nodding, frowning, sometimes laughing at a particularly sharp remark. You linger, half curious, half intimidated, aware that to ask a question might earn you an hour-long lecture in return. The sun climbs higher, shadows shrinking. Your woolen cloak feels heavier now, trapping heat, making you itch. You shift, wishing for something lighter, but the crowd pays you no mind. They're too busy haggling over prices, shouting greetings, or sneaking an extra fig into their baskets. You pause by a fountain, cool water trickling from a spout carved into the shape of a lion's head. You cup your hands, drinking deeply, the chill refreshing against your throat. For a moment, you close your eyes, listening to the sounds, the clang of metal, the chatter of voices, the bark of dogs, the distant strains of a flute. It is overwhelming and grounding all at once. The agora is alive, and you are inside it, swallowed whole by its pulse. You drift from the marketplace, stalls toward the shaded colonnades, where clusters of men gather not for goods, but for words. The air here is cooler, shadows cast by the tall stone columns that frame the space. The chatter is different, too less about fish prices, more about the nature of truth itself. You find yourself on the edge of a circle, where a bearded man gestures with his hands, his voice calm but insistent. Around him, younger men lean in, nodding, frowning, occasionally interrupting with questions. The man someone whispers his name, Socrates asks, more than he answers. Each reply from the group is met with another probing question, a gentle trap that reveals contradictions lurking in their thoughts. A mainstream fact holds steady. Philosophy wasn't just a pastime in Athens. It was a way of life, a practice that unfolded in public spaces. Teachers like Socrates, and later Plato and Aristotle, didn't confine themselves to classrooms. They sought conversation in the streets, the agora, the gymnasia. Philosophy was as much about dialogue as it was about theory. You lean closer, trying to follow. The debaters turn to justice, what it means, whether it is universal or dependent on circumstance. The words twist and turn like a river, always moving, never quite settling. Someone argues that justice means giving people what they deserve. Another counters that justice is simply the interest of the stronger. Socrates smiles faintly, asking another question that tangles them both. A quirky tidbit amuses you. Not everyone adored these discussions. Some Athenians found philosophers annoying, wandering the streets barefoot, questioning everything from morality to shoemaking, and refusing to give straight answers. In fact, jokes about philosophers were common in comedies of the time. Imagine a stand-up routine where the punchline is a guy asking, "But what is a shoe, really?" And you're not far off. Historians still argue whether Socrates' method was genuinely beloved by the public, or whether he was more tolerated as a curious eccentric, until his trial revealed how dangerous ideas could seem. What's certain is that standing here, listening to him unravel the definitions of justice, you feel both enlightened and exhausted. The rhythm of his questions lulls you. His voice is steady, measured, almost hypnotic. You can feel your eyelids grow heavy even as your mind strains to keep pace. The words wash over you like waves, their meaning slipping away even as you reach for it. You glance around. Not everyone is captivated. Some men lean on columns, yawning. A boy kicks idly at the dust, clearly wishing he were at the theater instead. Philosophy, like wine, is an acquired taste. Still, you sense its importance. This is not idle chatter, is the foundation of something larger, the attempt to shape a society, not just by rules and force, but by reasoned thought. The Greeks are building not only temples of stone, but temples of words, ideas, questions. You shift your cloak, stifling a yawn of your own. Philosophy for the sleepless indeed keeps your mind awake even as your body longs for rest, and you wonder, not for the first time, how long you could keep pace in a world where debates replace morning news and every question leads to 5 more. The circle breaks for a moment. Men stretching, murmuring, drifting back toward the agora. The bearded man remains, still smiling faintly, as if the questions never truly end. You step back into the sunlight. Blinking, the noise of the marketplace rushing back around you. Ahead lies the gymnasium, where the air hums with a very different kind of energy. The road bends toward a sprawling courtyard, and soon you hear it, the sharp crack of bodies colliding, the rhythmic thud of fists against leather, the steady beat of feet in dust. You've found the gymnasium, but banish any thought of treadmills and neon lights. Here, exercise is performed in the open air, surrounded by tall plane trees that cast dappled shade on the ground. The scent of dust, sweat, and olive oil hangs thick, warmed by the midday sun. Men of all ages gather, their bodies lean, skin bronzed, muscles taut. And yes, they are naked. Entirely, you pause, blinking, trying to look casual about it. A mainstream fact clarifies. In ancient Greece, nudity in the gymnasium wasn't scandalous. It was the norm. The word gymnos literally means naked. To exercise without clothing was a celebration of the human form, of discipline, and of athletic beauty. To them, it was perfectly natural. To you, it's a bit of an adjustment. You're handed a small flask of olive oil by a boy whose job is to assist. He gestures for you to strip, and when you hesitate, he gives you a look that says, "Clothes are for outsiders." With a resigned sigh, you disrobe, fold your kitten awkwardly, and rub oil into your skin. The liquid is cool at first, then sticky, making your palms slippery. You smell faintly of a salad again, which seems to be your new normal. Nearby, men wrestle, their bodies gleaming in the sun. They grip and twist, aiming to throw each other to the ground. A crowd gathers, cheering, laughing, shouting advice. You're ushered into a ring before you can object. Your opponent, a broad-shouldered man with a grin that suggests this is his favorite part of the day, bows slightly before lunging. The earth is hot beneath your bare feet. Dust clings to your oiled skin, forming a gritty paste as you grapple awkwardly. He seizes your arm, twists, and before you know it, you're on your back staring at the blinding sky. Laughter ripples through the crowd. You cough, spitting dust, and force yourself up. Round 2 begins. A quirky tidbit softens your bruised ego. Athletes sometimes dusted their oiled bodies with fine sand to improve grip and reduce glare. Afterward, the mixture of oil, sweat, and dirt was scraped off with strigils and collected. The scrapings, known as glowios, were actually bottled and sold, believed to have medicinal or even magical properties. Imagine someone paying for a jar of restless wet mud. Stranger still, they did. Historians still argue whether the gymnasium was more about physical training or social bonding. Was it primarily a school of strength, or was it equally a space of politics, philosophy, and friendship? Standing here, bruised and sweating, you suspect it was both. After your graceless attempt at wrestling, you're offered a discus, a heavy round of bronze. You heave it awkwardly, sending it wobbling a pitiful distance before it thuds into the dust. More laughter. A boy retrieves it, shaking his head. Clearly, you won't be earning a laurel crown today. But despite the bruises, the sting of sweat in your eyes, and the humiliation of your performance, you notice something. There's camaraderie here. The men laugh, yes, but they also clap you on the back, offering encouragement. They admire the effort, even when the execution is lacking. By the time you leave the gymnasium, scraped and sore, the sun has climbed high overhead. The air is thick with heat, your skin coated in oil and grit. You ache in places you didn't know existed. And yet, as you limp toward the next part of the city, you can't help but smile faintly. Athens is not gentle, but it is alive. Ahead, a crowd gathers at the theater, voices buzzing with anticipation. The theater rises before you. Carved into the slope of a hill, its semicircular rows of stone benches gleaming in the sun. Already, people are streaming in, families with baskets of food, men with cloaks folded neatly over their arms, children tugging eagerly at their parents' hands. The air vibrates with chatter, laughter, and the occasional shout of a vendor selling nuts or figs. You find a place among the crowd, settling onto a hard stone seat worn smooth by countless bodies before yours. It's not comfortable, but the view is unmatched. Below the orchestra, the circular stage awaits the performers. Behind it stands a simple wooden backdrop, painted to suggest temples or palaces. Ready to frame the drama to come, a mainstream fact grounds you. Theatre in Athens wasn't just entertainment. It was civic duty, religious ritual, and cultural education all at once. Plays were performed during festivals honoring Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy. Attendance was encouraged, even subsidized, because the city believed drama shaped citizens' moral and civic understanding. The performance begins with music, flutes, and drums, then the chorus enters, moving as one, their voices rising in unison. Their chants echo through the theater, words carried clearly even to the farthest rows. You marvel at the acoustics. The way every sound seems amplified without the need for microphones or amplifiers. The play itself is a tragedy. A king, proud and flawed, struggles against fate. His choices, though bold, lead inevitably to ruin. The chorus laments, the gods loom, and the audience leans forward, captivated. You, too, feel a shiver as the actor's face is masked in exaggerated expressions, still over lines that strike at something deep and timeless. A quirky tidbit catches your ear. Between the solemn tragedies, comedies were also performed, often poking fun at politicians, philosophers, and even the gods. Imagine a play where Socrates is portrayed as a bumbling fool, or where a current general is mocked with a donkey mask. The Athenians loved satire, and their humor could be biting. You wonder what they'd make of your clumsy wrestling attempt earlier. Probably a chorus would be dedicated to it. Historians still argue whether the audience absorbed these plays passively, as moral instruction, or actively as civic dialogue. Did the plays truly change minds about justice, leadership, or hubris, or did they simply entertain? Perhaps both. But sitting here, surrounded by thousands of voices gasping, laughing, and crying together, you sense the power of theatre to bind a community. The sun dips lower as the play continues, shadows stretching across the stone seats. The chorus sings again, their voices rising in haunting harmony. The story moves inexorably toward its end. The king broken, the gods unmoved, the lesson carved deep into the hearts of all who watch. You glance around. Some people weep quietly, wiping their eyes with cloaks. Others whisper, debating the meaning of a line, the justice of the gods, the folly of pride. The air is thick with feeling, heavy yet strangely cleansing. By the time the play ends, you feel both exhausted and renewed. The applause is a thunder of sandals stamping stone, a rhythm that shakes the ground. The actors bow, their masks gleaming in the fading light. The theatre empties slowly, the crowd spilling back into the streets. You rise stiffly, your cloak clinging where sweat has dampened it, your mind buzzing with images of gods, kings, and fate. The air outside smells of figs and dust, of life continuing, of people carrying stories with them like embers to be rekindled in their homes. Your stomach growls again, but this time the thought of food feels less urgent. You are full in another way, filled with words, with rhythm, with the strange communal catharsis the theatre provides. And yet, soon enough, hunger will return. The theatre empties into the streets, and you're carried along in the slow tide of people. Voices rise in conversation about the place, some thoughtful, some mocking, others already moving on to the more practical matter of food. Your stomach agrees with the latter group. The midday sun sits high overhead, its heat pressing against your shoulders, making the wool of your haemation feel twice as heavy. The dust of the city clings to your skin, mixing with the faint sheen of olive oil left from the gymnasium. Your body craves rest and refreshment, but lunch in Athens is a humble affair. You find a shaded spot near a stone where men gather in loose groups, pulling figs and cheese from baskets, breaking loaves of barley bread, sipping diluted wine. There are no steaming stews or extravagant spreads, not for the average Athenian. Lunch is light, often skipped entirely if the morning work dragged long. Food is fuel here, and the real meal comes later. When the sun sinks and the air cools, a mainstream fact steadies you. Athenians ate simply, relying heavily on what the land provided: barley, olives, grapes, and cheese. Meat was rare for daily meals, reserved more for sacrifices and festivals. Fish, however, was a staple. Hauled in fresh from the Aegean and sold in the bustling markets. You nibble on a wedge of cheese, sharp and salty, its crumbly texture sticking to your fingers. A fig follows, soft and sweet, its seeds crunching faintly between your teeth. The balance of salt and sugar is satisfying, though fleeting. Bread fills the gaps, heavy and coarse, washed down with a sip of watered wine that tastes faintly of clay from its jug. A quirky tidbit reaches you as a neighbor unwraps his own bundle. Some Athenians believed onions and garlic were essential midday fuel, eaten raw to ward off weakness. Soldiers especially relied on them, convinced they gave strength and courage. You imagine entire rows of hoplites breathing garlic at the enemy, and you can't decide if it's intimidating or just unpleasant. Historians still argue whether lunch was truly part of daily routine or more of an occasional pause. Some suggest that the Greek diet leaned heavily on just 2 meals, one small, one large, while others insist the midday bite was a fixture. Either way, what you experience now feels more like a snack than a feast. Around you, conversation drifts between topics: the play you just saw, the price of figs, the rumor of ships arriving in Piraeus with grain from distant lands. A man gestures wildly, his hands sticky with cheese, as he argues politics. Another leans back against the column, eyes closed, chewing slowly as if savoring the moment of shade more than the food. You wipe your hands on your cloak, aware that oil and crumbs now decorate the fabric. No napkins here, no utensils, ether just fingers, bread, and patience. A fly buzzes near your ear, and you wave it away, remembering again that this is a world without screens, without quiet cafes, without coffee shops piping jazz into the air. Here, lunch is brief, functional, communal, and yet there's comfort in its simplicity. You eat what you need, nothing more, and let the body carry on as you rise. Your belly neither full nor empty, the sound of the city pulls you again. Far off, you hear gulls crying, the unmistakable call of the sea. The docks at Piraeus beckon, where salt air mixes with the chaos of trade. The path south winds down from Athens, and soon the smell of salt sharpens in the air. The cries of gulls grow louder, mingling with shouts, laughter, and the creak of wood against water. Piraeus, the bustling harbour, sprawls before you. Ships crowd the docks, their sails furled, their masts rising like a forest of poles against the sky. Men haul ropes, their muscles straining as they guide vessels into place. Others roll heavy amphorae down planks, the clay jars clinking ominously as they settle. The ground trembles beneath the weight of trade, and everywhere you turn, life surges with movement. A mainstream fact grounds you. Piraeus was Athens' lifeline, its essential harbour, the hub that connected the city to grain shipments from Egypt, timber from Macedonia, and countless other goods from across the Mediterranean. Without this harbour, Athens' grand democracy and bustling agora would wither. The air here is thick with smells. Fish fresh, salted, dried dominates, its sharpness catching in your throat. Tar and pitch sting your nose, used to seal ships against the sea. Spices drift faintly, exotic and unfamiliar, carried from lands you can barely imagine. Sweat, smoke, brine, and wine, all of it mingles into one overwhelming perfume of commerce. You pause by a stall where fishmongers display their catch, gleaming silver scales, gaping mouths, eyes glassy and staring. Some fish are gutted and laid open, others salted in barrels, still others strung together like garlands. A woman gestures proudly at her squid, their tentacles limp and glistening. A quirky tidbit slides into the scene. Athenians were so obsessed with fish that critics joked they'd sell their cloaks for a particularly fine cut. Certain fish, like red mullet, were prized delicacies, fetched at high prices in the market. And yes, some poets mocked the craze, writing verses about men who'd bankrupt themselves for the perfect fillet. You eye the squid nervously, wondering if it's worth your himation. Historians still argue whether the obsession with fish reflected true culinary taste across classes, or whether it was mostly an indulgence of the wealthy. The poor, after all, were more likely to live on salted scraps than on delicacies. But here, in the harbour, you see both ends of the spectrum: lavish displays for those who can afford them, simple dried fish for those who cannot. You wander further, passing taverns where sailors shout and sing, their voices rising in drunken cheer. Music spills out, flutes, drums, the clatter of cups against wooden tables. A few wave at you, inviting you to join. But the smell of stale wine and sweat pushes you onward. Beyond the taverns, shipbuilders labor. The ring of hammers echoes across the water, shaping planks, sealing seams, preparing new vessels for voyages. The ships themselves are sleek, their prows carved with eyes to ward off ill fortune. You pause to trace one carving, the wood smooth beneath your fingers, the painted iris staring back as if alive. The sun glints on the water, dazzling, blinding. Waves slap against the hulls, sending spray into the air. Children chase each other along the docks, their laughter piercing the din. Dogs bark, gulls wheel, men shout. The harbour is a storm of life, relentless and unceasing. You step aside, letting a line of men pass with a massive amphora balanced on poles across their shoulders. The jar wobbles dangerously, sloshing with wine, before settling safely onto a waiting cart. Trade never stops here. Your head spins with the noise, the smells, the press of bodies. It's exhilarating, but also exhausting. You're an outsider, struggling to keep pace with a city that thrives on constant motion. As the sun begins its slow descent, you turn back toward Athens, ears still ringing with gulls and hammers. Ahead lies the Acropolis, rising like a crown above the city, calling you toward worship, sacrifice, and the quiet smoke of offerings. The climb back toward Athens is steady, the stone paths rising under your sandals, the city narrowing as streets curl upward. Your breath comes slower now, partly from the heat, partly from the anticipation of what lies ahead. Above everything else, the Acropolis towers a plateau crowned with temples, its marble gleaming against the fading sun. The closer you come, the more solemn the air feels. People ascend in clusters, their chatter quieter than in the agora or the docks. The climb itself seems designed to slow you, to prepare you for what waits at the top. Dust clings to your ankles, and the smell of smoke drifts faintly downward. Wood, fat, and herbs mingling into a fragrance, both comforting and unsettling. You pass through the Propylaea, its massive columns framing the path like sentinels. Shadows stretch across the marble, the air cools slightly, and for a moment you almost forget the bustling world below. A mainstream fact steadies you. The Parthenon, the great temple of Athena, dominates the Acropolis. A monument not just to faith but to Athenian pride. Built during the height of Athens' power, it stands as both sanctuary and statement. A reminder that this city believes itself chosen, favored by the goddess of wisdom and war. As you approach, you hear the low murmur of prayers, the crackle of fire, the faint metallic clink of coins offered in dedication. At the altar, smoke coils upward, dark and twisting, carrying the scent of sacrifice. Animals are led ingots, sheep, sometimes cattle. Their hooves scrape against stone, their bodies tense as they near the flame. Priests move calmly, their robes swaying, their gestures deliberate. A quirky tidbit drifts into thought for certain rituals. Greeks mixed barley with water and scattered it over the sacrificial animal. If the animal nodded, as if in agreement, it was considered consent to the offering. Imagine a goat politely bobbing its head before meeting its fate consent by nodding. An oddly bureaucratic way of involving livestock in divine affairs. Historians still argue whether sacrifices were truly about feeding the gods, or more about binding the community together. After all, much of the meat was cooked and shared among citizens after the ritual. Was it for Athena, or was it for the hungry bellies of Athenians? Perhaps both, perhaps neither. The debates stretch long, just as the smoke stretches skyward. You edge closer, careful not to intrude. The fire burns brightly, the animal cries briefly, then fades. Ash scatters, sparks dance, and the ritual continues, seamless as breathing. Around you, people bow heads, murmur prayers, cross fingers against unseen forces. You follow their example, though your own prayer feels clumsy, awkward. More imitation than conviction. The setting sun bathes the temples in gold. Columns glow, carvings sharpen into relief. Shadows deepen between them. Statues watch you with marble eyes, unblinking, timeless. Athena herself towers in bronze nearby, her spear once said to shine so brightly sailors could glimpse it from afar. You imagine the flash of metal against the sky, a beacon for both ship and soul. The air cools as evening deepens. The city hums below, distant now, muted. Up here, everything feels suspended, time slowed. Voices hushed, the marble itself seeming to breathe. You linger, reluctant to leave. Though the smoke clings to your hair and your stomach reminds you that another meal waits. You descend slowly, the steps uneven, the night pressing in. Ahead lies not ritual, not philosophy, but politics, the raw voice of the people in assembly. Where words wield more force than spears, the descent from the Acropolis leads you toward a different gathering. The air is thicker here, less reverent, more electric. Torches flicker, voices rise, feet shuffle across stone as men assemble. Not priests this time, but citizens ready to argue, vote, and shape the future. You enter the Nyx, the open-air meeting place of the Athenian assembly. It is not grand like the temples, but it hums with a different kind of power. The ground slopes like a theatre, seating arranged for thousands. At the center, a stone platform rises the bema, where speakers mount to address the crowd. A mainstream fact steadies you. Here, in this very place, democracy breathes. Every free male citizen of Athens may stand and speak, may cast his vote, may influence the course of the city. It is messy, loud, often chaotic, but it is revolutionary, the idea that governance belongs not to kings, but to people. The crowd buzzes with anticipation. Men push closer, sandals scraping, cloaks brushing, breaths mingling. Arguments flare before the session even begins. Debates over taxes, over wars, over whether to build more ships or more walls. The torchlight dances on faces, carving deep lines of worry, anger, pride. You hear one man deride a proposal as foolish, another praise it as essential. Voices overlap, tempers flare, and laughter bursts out unexpectedly as someone mocks an opponent's words. This is politics in its rawest form, not polished, not rehearsed, but alive. Immediate, a quirky tidbit emerges from the noise, to discourage dithering or endless speeches. A water-clocked clepsydra was used to time speakers. Once the water drained, their turn was over, no matter how dramatic their pause. Imagine a modern politician being cut off mid-sentence because the water ran out. Perhaps not a bad idea. Historians still argue whether Athenian democracy was truly inclusive, or simply a privilege for a narrow slice of society. After all, women, slaves, and foreigners stood excluded, voiceless in decisions that affected them. Was this the dawn of freedom, or merely a new form of hierarchy? The debate lingers, unresolved. The echoes bouncing through centuries. You watch as a man climbs the beamer, his cloak sweeping behind him. His voice booms across the assembly, calling for caution, restraint, peace. Another follows, demanding boldness, expansion, war. The crowd shifts, restless, torn between paths. Murmurs ripple like wind through leaves. Votes will soon be cast by a show of hands, each gesture carrying weight. Each arm a piece of Athens' destiny. You feel the swell of the crowd, the heat of bodies pressed together, the tension of collective decision. It is thrilling, but also exhausting. Your voice is silent. Here you are, a visitor, a shadow in this gathering, but you sense the gravity of the moment. The torches burn lower. Arguments soften into murmurs. Decisions close into outcomes. Some cheer, others curse, but the city moves on, always forward, always restless. Democracy is not calm. It is stormed. As the assembly disperses, men drift toward homes, taverns, and symposiums. The night stretches before you, the promise of wine and conversation pulling you along. Dinner awaits not solitary, not quiet, but reclining among strangers and friends, where riddles and music mix with the clink of cups. The streets glow faintly under the oil lamps, their flames trembling in the warm night air. Voices scatter around you after argument, the occasional shout of a seller still lingering with baskets of figs or nuts. You follow the flow of men who peel away from the assembly, drifting towards smaller courtyards where doors open wide and couches wait. You have been invited, perhaps reluctantly, perhaps out of curiosity, to a symposium, that most Athenian of evening gatherings. The word itself means drinking together, but you soon learn it's more than simply lifting cups. It's where philosophy slides into jokes, where politics gives way to riddles, and where music softens the edges of the day. The courtyard is lit with more lamps, their light bouncing off painted walls. Couches line the space, each covered with simple cloths, cushions arranged for comfort. Men recline sideways, propped on elbows, feet stretching outward. You awkwardly copy them, the posture foreign, the balance uncertain. A mainstream fact steadies you. Wine is central here, but never drunk straight. Greeks always diluted it with water, sometimes flavored with herbs or honey. Drinking it pure was considered barbaric, the mark of someone without discipline. Tonight, large mixing bowls, craters stand ready, wine poured, water added, stirred until balance is achieved. The host claps, and servants move swiftly. Cups are filled, platters laid out bread, cheese, roasted chickpeas, perhaps a sliver of dried fish. Not a feast, but enough to keep hunger at bay while wine and talk flow freely. Flutes sound in the background, their notes weaving soft threads through the gathering. A quirky tidbit surfaces with the wine. Some symposiums included playful contests, such as kotabos, where men flicked the dregs of their cups at targets, aiming to topple saucers or ring small bronze discs. Imagine a room of half-drunk philosophers competing at ancient wine pong, cheering whenever a splash found its mark. You try it once, clumsily, and succeed only in staining your cloak. Historians still argue whether symposiums were truly intellectual arenas, where men debated love, virtue, and truth, or whether most were simply excuses for overindulgence. Plato would have you believe in lofty conversations about the nature of beauty. Aristophanes might remind you that burps and jokes were equally part of the night. Likely, it was both wine loosening tongues enough for brilliance and absurdity to tumble out together. The talk around you shifts quickly. One man praises the courage of Sparta, another mocks their lack of theatre. A philosopher at the end launches into a grand speech on the immortality of the soul, interrupted by a cough and a snicker. A riddle follows. What walks on 4 legs at dawn, 2 at noon, and 3 at dusk? You know the answer, but the men debate it with drunken seriousness, as though discovering it for the first time. The air thickens with laughter, smoke, and the sweet Thames of diluted wine. A lyre joins the flute, fingers plucking out gentle melodies. A slave girl pours more wine, her eyes downcast, her steps practiced. You will recline deeper, the cushion beneath you surprisingly comfortable, the clay cup cool in your hand. At moments, the gathering feels timeless, almost modern, the jokes, the teasing, the way men edge between seriousness and silliness. At other times, the gulf between worlds yawns wide. The absence of women, except as entertainers or servants, leaves a sharp emptiness. The talk of politics excludes so many voices you long to hear. Still, as the night deepens, you let yourself sink into the rhythm. Sip, laugh, listen, lean back. The torches hiss faintly as oil burns low. Your head swims, not from the wine, but from the sheer press of sound, thought, and presence. And then, like a shadow against the laughter, you hear whispers of Sparta. Tales drift through the symposium rumors of their harsh world, their unyielding discipline, their children trained from birth to endure what you could barely imagine. Athens may pride itself on democracy and drama, but Sparta lingers always as its darker mirror. The voices of the symposium fade as you imagine another land, another rhythm of life. If Athens is bright with marble, chatter, and debate, Sparta lies in shadow stark, disciplined, relentless. Even here, Athenians speak of it with a mixture of fascination and unease. You picture the journey south, over mountains and rivers, until the land flattens into Laconia. The air feels different, quieter, harsher, as though even the wind obeys strict rules. The city itself is less a city than a scattering of villages, bound together not by walls or monuments, but by iron discipline. A mainstream fact steadies you in Sparta. Every citizen was a soldier first. From the moment boys turned 7, they entered the Agoge Statron system of training designed to harden body and mind. Play was competition, meals were meager, punishments were harsh. The goal was simple: to forge warriors who would never break. You imagine yourself as one of those children, taken from home, handed over to older youths who bark orders. Your blanket is thin, your sandals rough, your meals little more than black broth pork, boiled in blood and vinegar. You chew it once, twice, and decide starvation might be preferable. A quirky tidbit drifts into the memory. Spartan boys were encouraged to steal food, but punished if caught not for the theft, but for failing to do it skillfully. Hunger was a teacher, stealth a virtue. You picture a boy sneaking bread under his cloak, only to suffer a lashing when it slipped into sight. The lesson: be better at hiding next time. Historians still argue whether the Spartan system truly created unbeatable warriors, or whether it was more myth than reality, polished by admirers and enemies alike. Some accounts paint Spartans as near invincible, others remind us of their rare but devastating defeats. The truth, as always, lies somewhere between story and stone. The rhythm of their lives beats differently. Where Athenians gather for theatre, Spartans march. Where Athenians argue in assembly, Spartans train in silence. Even their women, so unusual in the Greek world, hold property, speak boldly, and command households with confidence. You imagine them standing tall, unafraid to remind men of their duties. And yet, beneath the admiration, shadows stir. The Spartan system rested on the labor of Helots enslaved people tied to the land, outnumbering Spartans many times over. To maintain control, Spartans wove fear into the fabric of life, holding brutal rites, suppressing revolts, turning vigilance into habit. The silence of Laconia hides cries you'll never hear. The symposium fades completely, leaving you standing in the imagined dust of Sparta. No chatter, no music, no fig sellers hawking in the streets. Only the rhythm of boots against earth, the hiss of iron on whetstone, the stern gaze of men who measure life in endurance. For a moment, you wonder which city is harder to survive, Athens, with its endless talk and dusty bread, or Sparta, with its unyielding rules and black broth. Either way, you probably wouldn't last long. The thought softens as you return to Athens. The symposium is ending, the lamps dim, the city settling into night. The beds may be thin, the floors hard, the air thick with smoke, but even here, rest waits. You drift toward it, weary from the weight of ancient worlds. The night air cools as you leave the symposium behind, your head light with wine and your body heavy with exhaustion. The streets of Athens are quieter now, though never silent. Somewhere a dog barks, its echo weaving between stone walls. Far off, a flute still plays, faint and wandering, as if reluctant to surrender the day. You pass homes where lamps flicker through narrow windows. Shadows move inside families, preparing for bed, servants clearing the remnants of supper, children already curled on mats. The air carries a mix of scents, smoke from extinguished fires, the faint sweetness of figs left out to dry, the tang of the day's dust still clinging to the streets. Your own lodging feels small compared to the grandeur you've witnessed, but it welcomes you nonetheless. The door creaks, the threshold stone cooled beneath your feet. Inside, the space is dark except for a single oil lamp, its flame trembling, casting golden arcs along the walls. A mainstream fact steadies you. Athenians rarely slept on beds as you know them. Wooden frames, strung with leather strips or woven cords, held thin mattresses stuffed with straw or wool. Pillows were sparse, blankets coarse. Comfort was not the goal, rest was. However brief before dawn returned with demands. You lower yourself onto a mat, its surface uneven, the smell of straw faint but earthy. the thin wool covering scratches lightly against your skin. Still, the body adapts quickly, grateful for any surface after hours of wandering, watching, listening. A quirky tidbit drifts into thought as you settle. Some Greeks believed certain dreams were messages from the gods, warnings or promises carried on the wings of sleep. Temples like that of Asclepius even welcomed visitors who came solely to sleep within sacred walls, hoping for healing visions. Tonight, you wonder what kind of dream the gods might send to someone like you, a stranger fumbling through their world. Historians still argue whether Athenians slept through the night or followed a segmented rhythm, waking once in the dark hours to talk, eat, or pray before returning to rest. Evidence leans toward the latter, suggesting that ancient nights were not stretches of unbroken slumber, but softer, gentler intervals. Perhaps tonight you will stir halfway, sit up to listen to the silence, then fold yourself back into sleep. The oil lamp gutters lower, its flame shrinking, shadows deepening. The sounds of the city recede further. Your body grows heavy, your eyes close, and yet the images linger. The marble of the Parthenon glowing in sunset. The voices rising in assembly, the clatter of amphorae rolling on the docks. The taste of figs and olives on your tongue. You survived one day belly. Your clothes itch, your stomach is unsatisfied, your head aches with dust and debate. And still a strange warmth fills you, knowing that you walked where they walked, sat where they argued, ate what they ate. For all its strangeness, the rhythm of their lives has carried you along, cradled by a city both foreign and familiar. Outside, the last lamp flickers out, leaving the street in darkness. Above, the stars shine unblinking, as they always have, as they always will. And now, as the final echoes of the day fade, let your breath soften. The streets of Athens disappear into stillness, their dust settling, their voices resting. The marble temples retreat into the distance, their outlines dim against the quiet sky. You lie back fully, the straw mat beneath you fading into the bed you know, the woolen blanket dissolving into your own familiar covers. The lamp's flame dwindles, its glow a soft blur before vanishing altogether. Your body grows heavier, each limb sinking deeper, as though the weight of the ancient city drifts away from you. The noise of the agora, the clang of the docks, the laughter of the symposium, they all dissolve, like smoke thinning into night air. Nothing is required of you now. No debates, no rituals, no long walks beneath a glaring sun. Only rest, only quiet. The rhythm of their lives has slowed, and your own rhythm slows with it, heartbeat steady, breath smooth, thoughts unraveling into gentle silence. If a dream comes, let it be soft. Perhaps Athena's owl will fly across it, silent wings guiding you deeper into calm. Perhaps the sound of the Aegean will lap faintly at its edges, rocking you gently as the sea rocks its ships. But whether dreams come or not, you are safe here, at ease, cradled in rest, so let go now. Release the dust, the stone, the chatter. Sink into quiet, drift into sleep, into sleep. Hey guys, tonight we step into the cradle of civilization, where clay tablets, city walls, and endless toil define life. You probably won't survive this, at least not without a serious sunburn or a backache that lasts a millennium. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, hey, post your location and the local time in the comments. It's always nice to know where we're traveling from, even if only in spirit. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across the dusty streets of an early Mesopotamian city, the air thick with dust and the faint tang of drying mud from the riverbanks. The sun presses down like an impatient overseer, and sweat drips uncomfortably beneath your linen tunic. Here, life is ruled by the rivers, by the unpredictable generosity of the Tigris and Euphrates, and by the whims of those who wield power over bricks and barley. Historians still argue whether Mesopotamians considered themselves truly lucky or just deeply resigned, but either way, the rhythm of their lives, ploughing, baking, hauling water keeps the world moving. Your morning begins before the sun fully rises, with the smell of wet clay mingling with the faint sweetness of barley grains. You kneel to press dough for bread, your hands sticky and rough, and you hear the low murmur of neighbors calling greetings in a language that sounds soft but carries the weight of the centuries. Even here, under the looming ziggurats, there's no avoiding the endless labor. Someone must fetch water, someone must haul mud for the city walls, and someone must make sure the animals don't wander into the canal. And yes, it's you, probably. The sun climbs higher, and the heat becomes a persistent companion, baking your skin and the earth beneath your sandals. You adjust the sling of your basket, filled with reeds or grain, thinking only half in jest that perhaps evolution missed a memo when it designed humans for Mesopotamian summers. A light breeze offers a momentary sigh of relief, carrying with it the scent of date palms and cooking fires. Gentle sarcasm, you know to yourself, becomes essential. Otherwise, the endless toil can feel absurdly heavy. As you navigate the narrow alleyways, you pass the work of countless hands. Mud bricks line the walls, still warm from the sun, and children dart about, balancing small clay figurines that are probably more stable than their creators hope. Slaves shuffle past, carrying water in earthen jars, and scribes those fortunate fuge symbols into clay tablets, their styluses scratching soft whispers of laws, stories, and lists. Some days you imagine swapping places with them, though only for a moment before remembering the sun and the smell of wet earth. Floods are an ever-present concern. The river can be generous, coating your fields with nutrient-rich silt one year, then mercilessly destructive the next. You trudge along a canal, noticing the waterline and imagining how easily it might rise, swallowing the harvest you just spent days planting. Scholars still debate exactly how Mesopotamians predicted these floods, but for now, the anxiety is yours to feel, slow and steady, like a drumbeat in the back of your mind. Amid all this hardship, there are little details that capture the imagination. A cat slinking along a rooftop, perhaps more skilled at surviving than anyone in the street. A merchant arranging ceramic jars so neatly they almost seem like art. The subtle hum of daily life, where every footstep against clay, every scrape of basket against cobblestone, contributes to a rhythm both ancient and oddly comforting. And yes, a few soft jokes flit across your thoughts. You wonder if your sandals, glued together with hope, will survive the day, or if the sun itself might demand a toll for crossing the square. Despite everything, you notice moments of ingenuity everywhere. Reed mats serve as beds, baskets keep grains safe from rodents, and small mud ovens turn modest flour into something that sustains you. Historians still argue whether Mesopotamians ever truly relaxed. But you, sitting for a brief second on a sun-warmed step, can almost feel a pause, a tiny bubble of calm amidst the relentless pace. And so the day stretches out before you, A slow, measured march from dawn's soft light to the long shadows of evening. The rhythm of life here is harsh but steady, predictable yet full of tiny surprises. As you trudge past city walls and markets, past laborers and temple priests, you carry the awareness that every mundane action, every haul of water, every need of dew is part of a story much larger than yourself. In some quiet corner, maybe near the soft scent of a cooking fire, you feel the subtle wonder. These first cities, these early humans, were building civilization brick by brick, breath by breath, under a sun that would watch over generations. And as you feel your eyelids grow heavy, consider the gentle truth. You wouldn't last a day in this world without grit, cleverness, and a healthy dose of humor. Yet somehow, through toil, heat, and the occasional flood, they persisted. You imagine the voices of the past whispering faintly across the centuries, inviting you to slow down, listen, and drift into their rhythm. A single, soft breath, a glance at a simple clay tablet, and suddenly, you are part of that story, quietly carrying the weight and wonder of ancient Mesopotamia into your dreams, The morning unfolds with a soft, slow inevitability. You rise before the sun fully stretches its golden fingers across the mud brick rooftops. Your feet press into the cool, slightly damp floor of your home, the reed mat beneath barely cushioning the weight of a body that has slept poorly on thin straw. The smell of baked earth and lingering smoke drifts in through the small window openings, and the distant murmur of city life begins to filter in a merchant calling. A child squealing, the clatter of a water jar overturned in haste. You trudge toward the courtyard, carrying a small basket of flour, and immediately feel the rhythm of this world settling over you like a warm, relentless tide. Dawn in Mesopotamia is never gentle. The air is already thick, scented faintly with barley and the residue of last night's fires. You kneel on the stone floor to start mixing dough for bread, hands sticky and roughened from repetitive labor. Knead, fold, press. The motions are the same as they've been for centuries. A quiet ritual linking your body to countless generations. The bread may not be fancy, certainly not gold-encrusted like the loaves of the elite, but it sustains, and in this world, sustenance is triumph. You pause, briefly amused, noticing that the dough's elasticity mirrors your own need to stretch through another long day. By mid-morning, the city awakens fully. You step into the market square where the sun blazes overhead, painting every surface in stark, glaring light. Merchants arrange ceramic jars, finely crafted bowls, and shiny bronze tools, shouting softly, their voices weaving with the braying of donkeys and the occasional clatter of a fallen basket. Barley grains spill like golden rain from tilted sacks, a currency more vital than silver or gold for most. You handle a small pouch of barley, imagining how its value shifts with the whims of harvests and trade, and think wryly that money may be older than you realized and, perhaps even sillier. Historians still argue whether these early markets ever truly felt chaotic or if the order was embedded in the noise itself. Noon brings toil that is unrelenting. You fetch water from a canal that smells faintly of mud and reeds, carrying it back in a clay jar, balanced carefully on your hip. The sun is a constant companion, pressing down like a weight, making every movement a small challenge. Sweat drips into your eyes, stings your lips, and you wipe it away with the back of your sleeve, wondering, half jokingly, if your ancestors ever considered sunscreen, crocodile dung, or otherwise. Irrigation channels, dug painstakingly by human hands, channel water to fields, a lifeline in a land that can be merciless. Every drop, every hand motion, feels both ordinary and miraculous in the way it sustains life. By mid-afternoon, your responsibilities shift indoors, tending to animals or checking stored grain. You brush the straw from the corners of the stable, the faint smell of hay mingling with the ever-present aroma of baked mud. Chickens cluck, goats bleat, and a cat pads silently across the courtyard, its movement deliberate and graceful. Small moments like this offer a quiet contrast to the unyielding sun outside. A brief respite where the mind can wander, imagining stories of gods and heroes, or the unlikely misadventures of a runaway goat. Evening approaches slowly, the light softening into hues of orange and brown. You light an oil lamp, the flickering flame casting gentle shadows across the walls. The city outside continues, muffled but persistent, as families settle into their own routines. You feel the warmth of the lamp on your fingertips, a small comfort after a day of relentless labor. Historians still argue how often the ordinary citizen had time for leisure, yet somehow music harps, flutes, and soft chanting permeates the city, a reminder that even in work, life finds its melody. The night is your companion at last. You sit on a low stool, sipping a thin, warm drink made from barley or dates, watching the shadows dance across the mud brick walls. Your muscles ache, but the rhythm of the day has settled into a soothing pattern, almost hypnotic. Gentle laughter drifts from nearby homes. Children whisper stories, and you imagine that these small, everyday interactions are as essential to the city's heartbeat as the labor and laws that govern it. You can almost hear the echoes of voices from centuries past, whispering that survival is more than toilet, is resilience, community, and the subtle, persistent joy in the ordinary. And so, from bread making at dawn to nightfall under the soft glow of oil lamps, the day concludes in a gentle cadence. Every moment, every chore, every quiet breath contributes to a rhythm that is ancient, comforting, and strangely mesmerizing. You feel the weight of history pressing softly upon you, not as a burden, but as a lullaby sung by the very city itself. Tomorrow, the sun will rise again, the work will continue, and you will trudge onward. A living link in a chain that stretches back to the very first civilizations. You move through the streets with a careful awareness of the city's invisible hierarchy. Statues of kings and high priests line the approach to the main ziggurat, their stone eyes gazing down like patient, silent judges. Today, your path takes you past the royal palace, where King Hammurabi, renowned and feared, enforces laws that touch every corner of city life. His code, etched meticulously into stone, is famous for its clarity and severity. You pause for a moment, imagining the hammer of justice striking swiftly, and consider that even minor offenses, stealing a goat, disputing a neighbor's claim, could carry punishments harsh enough to make your eyebrows raise in disbelief. Gentle humor surfaces in your mind. Maybe I should have stayed in the fields and left lawmaking to the professionals. Hammurabi's laws are not abstract. They govern every action, and they remind you constantly that civilization, while impressive, is meticulous about control. Contracts must be honored, debts repaid, and behavior carefully measured against the expectations of rulers and gods alike. The stones steely stand as both warning and guidance, inscriptions glowing faintly in the midday sun. Historians still argue whether the laws were more aspirational or strictly enforced, but from your vantage point, under the watchful eyes of statues and guards, they feel immediate, almost tactile, as you continue. The sensory world of Mesopotamia envelops you. The air carries the warmth of baked clay and the subtle temps of metal from bronze tools hammered nearby. The streets echo with soft conversations, the squeak of sandals, and the occasional laughter of a child chasing a rolling clay ball. Within this environment, the king's law weaves a subtle but unrelenting presence, shaping the rhythms of daily life, from the way grain is measured to the fairness of disputes over livestock. You imagine scribes copying decrees, their styluses scratching symbols that will outlast generations. A quiet but profound connection to human continuity. A gentle breeze brings the faint scent of incense from the temple district, mingling strangely with the tang of sweat and dust. You pass a small gathering of people, listening intently as a merchant recounts a minor dispute resolved under Hammurabi's guidance. Even in this ordinary exchange, you sense the gravity of codified law, the invisible threads that tie the city together, ensuring that chaos remains just below the surface. And yet, you allow yourself a soft chuckle at the idea that someone centuries from now might find the punishments a little dramatic. Eye for an, justice has a certain theatricality, you think. Even while respecting its seriousness, the city feels alive with contrasts. Guards in bronze helmets march past, their sandals clattering against stone, while commoners carry baskets of barley and reeds with quiet determination. The hierarchy hums beneath the surface, a silent conductor orchestrating daily life. Even a misstep tripping over a stray stone or accidentally spilling water carries an echo of consequence, however minor. You move carefully, imagining that even a dropped jar might someday be judged in the eyes of the law, and appreciate the strange intimacy of such an ordered, codified society. You reach the edge of the palace courtyard, pausing to observe a scribe demonstrating the writing of contracts. Clay tablets are small but weighty, the marks of the stylus precise and deliberate. The tiny grooves catch the sun, shadows forming patterns almost like a secret language of authority. You run your fingers lightly along a sample tablet, imagining the lives encoded within. Gentle humor creeps back in. Perhaps the scribe's hand cramps were the first recorded occupational hazard. Historians still argue about how often common people actually interacted with the law directly, versus hearing about it through stories or officials. The answer is as hazy as the dust rising from the streets. Evening begins to draw shadows across the palace walls. You sense a subtle shift in energy, the elite retreat to private quarters, perfumed oils and soft cushions waiting, while the streets and fields remain occupied with practical matters. Hammurabi himself, you imagine, might be relaxing in a way only a king could, entirely removed from the toil that defines your day. You feel a mix of envy and relief. The king's life, though privileged, is bounded by expectations of an entirely different sort. In a soft ASMR-like realization, you appreciate that the laws themselves are part of the city's rhythm, echoing through the alleys and workshops, linking your ordinary footsteps to the grand narrative of civilization. As night settles, the city grows quieter. The laws of Hammurabi remain etched in stone, silent yet omnipresent, a reminder that life in ancient Mesopotamia is ordered, exacting, and inescapably intertwined with human ingenuity and human folly alike. You breathe in the cool air, feeling a strange comfort in this structure, this careful balance of power and daily survival. The day has been long, the sun harsh, yet there is a soft, almost hypnotic cadence to existence here, a pattern shaped by law, labor, and human resilience. And as you walk back to your modest home, the distant glimmer of torches against palace walls reminds you, even the strictest rules cannot diminish the quiet persistence of life. You step quietly into the courtyard, aware that much of the city's heartbeat depends on people like you scribes, hunched over clay tablets, women bustling between hearths and storage rooms, slaves moving with careful precision. Their efforts are often invisible to outsiders, yet the city would falter without them. You watch a scribe dip his stylus into soft clay, tracing signs that record the transactions of the day. Each mark is deliberate, a tiny commitment to memory and order, ensuring that taxes are paid, trades completed, and laws enforced. Gentle humor drifts through your thoughts. It's amazing that someone's handwriting could literally shape society, though probably less so if your fingers are sore from kneading dough all morning. You followed the soft clatter of reeds and pots to a household where women manage tasks with astonishing efficiency. Barley is measured, water fetched, and bread baked in small mud-lined ovens. Children are guided patiently, taught to respect the rhythm of chores and to navigate the narrow streets safely. You notice the quiet authority in their movements, the unspoken knowledge passed from one generation to the next. It's an orchestration of survival that requires both patience and skill, a subtle mastery often unnoticed but entirely essential. Historians still argue about the precise roles women held outside their homes, but you feel a clear, tactile sense of their influence as you watch, almost hypnotically, the dance of daily life. A slave emerges from a side alley carrying a heavy clay jar, balancing it with practiced precision. You imagine the weight of such labor over months, years, decades. The physical effort is immense, but the city's pulse continues, steady and unyielding. You gently chuckle at the idea of offering the slave a tiny medal for most consistent water carrier, knowing it would be entirely inappropriate yet amusing. Even in hardship, human minds seek levity. The scent of wet straw mixes with the lingering aroma of baking bread, grounding you in the sensory reality of their world. As the sun climbs higher, the courtyard hums with activity. Children play quietly with clay figurines and board games, imitating adult roles in miniature, a soft echo of the city's larger rhythms. You watch a young girl attempt to balance a small basket of grain on her head, wobbling but determined. A slight smile tugs at your lips. It's hard not to admire the resilience embedded in daily life. The scholars of our time still debate how structured children's play was in early Mesopotamia, whether it mirrored labor training or was purely for amusement. You, observing quietly, appreciate the subtle overlap between survival, instruction, and joy. Lunch arrives in a modest fashion, a simple dish of barley porridge, perhaps flavored with dates or herbs. You sit on a low reed mat, feeling the coarse grains against your tongue, and notice the artistry in even the simplest sustenance. Every action, from grinding the grain to cooking the porridge, is a rhythm, a meditation that softens the harshness of the sun outside. You remember the gentle sarcasm of the day so far. It's remarkable how a civilization so advanced relies so completely on the patience and retention of ordinary people. In the afternoon, you accompany a scribe to deliver tablets to a local merchant. The journey is short, but you notice the diversity of work happening simultaneously. Pottery being shaped, reeds being woven into baskets, goats herded along narrow streets. Each step is a lesson in interdependence. Without one role, the city's intricate balance falters. You feel the slow, soothing cadence of life as it unfolds, a rhythm punctuated by the occasional laughter, argument, or clatter of work, each note blending seamlessly into the symphony of survival. Evening approaches, and women begin preparing the household for nightfall. Fires are rekindled, small lamps lit, and children are guided to settle down after a day of playful imitation and learning. You take a moment to observe the quiet heroism of these unsung lives. Scribes, slaves, and women, while often overlooked in grand historical narratives, form the backbone of civilization itself. Gentle humor returns in your mind. It seems unfair that kings get statues while these people get dust and thankless labor. Yet somehow, in their daily persistence, they outshine marble in endurance and subtlety. Night falls softly, and the courtyard quiets. The rhythm of the city slows to a gentle hum as you feel the pulse of countless unnoticed actions. A candle flickering, a clay tablet drying, a basket of grain resting. You understand, as your eyelids grow heavy, that these are the hidden forces that shape history. The lives of scribes, slaves, and women are the quiet threads that hold the fabric of Mesopotamia together. And as you breathe in the faint scent of smoke and barley, you are lulled by the intimate understanding that survival, care, and subtle mastery create a rhythm both hypnotic and comforting, a lullaby for the soul, for the soul. The ziggurat rises before you like a mountain crafted by human hands, its stepped terraces reaching toward the sky with solemn ambition. You walk slowly along the wide, mud-brick stairs, feeling the rough edges beneath your palms, tracing the history embedded in every stone. The scent of incense drifts in the warm air, a mix of fragrant herbs and smoke curling in lazy spirals. You inhale softly, letting the aroma mingle with the dust and heat, and imagine the rituals that have been performed here for generations. Historians still argue whether these ceremonies were primarily religious, political, or a combination of both, but from where you stand, the ziggurat feels like the heartbeat of the city. Inside the temple chambers, the air is cooler, faintly damp from the stone and mud walls. Priests move with deliberate grace, their robes brushing against the floor, chanting in a rhythm that seems to echo both time and eternity. You notice the flicker of oil lamps, the soft clatter of small bells, and the quiet rustling of ceremonial robes. The rituals are precise, offerings of food, wine, and incense placed carefully before carved idols, each motion steeped in tradition. Gentle humor surfaces as you imagine trying to follow the intricate steps without tripping over your own feet, a cautionary reminder that devotion is often as much about balance as belief. From the terraces above, the city spreads beneath you in a mosaic of mud-brick homes, canals, and marketplaces. The distant murmur of daily life reaches your ears, a soft backdrop to the solemnity of the temple. You notice children chasing stray goats, merchants bargaining over barley, and women weaving baskets with rhythmic precision. Even in a place dedicated to gods, the pulse of ordinary existence persists, soft yet unyielding. You pause, letting the gentle cadence of life settle over you, like a slow river threading through the city, carrying stories and secrets alike. The ziggurat's rituals are both intimate and performative. You watch a priest carefully pour water into a shallow basin, chanting words that you cannot fully understand, yet somehow feel resonate deep within. The incense curls around the columns, shadows dancing across the walls in hypnotic patterns. Gentle humor drifts back into your thoughts. You imagine the gods themselves taking notes, perhaps sighing at human mistakes or chuckling at the occasional dropped offering. Historians still argue about the precise symbolism of certain gestures, whether they invoked divine favor, marked seasonal transitions, or simply displayed human ingenuity. but the mystery lingers pleasantly in the air. You wander toward a smaller chamber off to the side, where offerings are collected and catalogued. Clay bowls, tiny figurines, and carefully wrapped grains are arranged in neat rows. The effort and organization reveal a civilization obsessed with order and ritual, yet suffused with creativity. You can almost hear the whispers of past priests, instructions repeated over decades, generations passing down knowledge in quiet, meticulous ways. The scent of dried herbs is strong here, mingling with the faint tank of baked mud, a sensory memory of countless ceremonies. From the ziggurat's peak, you can see the distant fields and canals, the source of life and labor that sustains the city below. Farmers work tirelessly under the hot sun, their movements a mirrored rhythm of the priest's chants within. The juxtaposition is quiet but poignant, devotion to gods above, toil for survival below. Gentle sarcasm creeps into your mind. You, standing safely on stone steps, are certainly doing better than the ploughman down by the river, yet you share in their story, if only through observation. As evening approaches, the temple rituals wind down. The flickering lamps cast long shadows, and the city's noises soften to a distant murmur. You feel a sense of calm settle over the ziggurat, the mysteries of the temple quieting as night takes hold. Even the incense seems to rest, leaving a faint, lingering aroma that clings to your skin. Historians still debate the exact role of these rituals in daily life, yet their presence is undeniable. They offer continuity, structure, and a gentle, meditative rhythm in a world of hard labor and fleeting sunlight. Descending slowly, you carry the soft echoes of chants, the faint scent of incense, and the tactile memory of warm stone against your hands. The rituals of the ziggurat are less about spectacle for outsiders and more about the subtle, enduring cadence of belief woven into the very fabric of Mesopotamian life. As you step back into the courtyard below, the city feels both enormous and intimate, its pulse synchronized with yours in a slow, mesmerizing dance. Here, in this place of devotion and mystery, the rhythm of civilization unfolds in soft, deliberate patterns, inviting you to slow down, breathe, and listen to the whispers of time. You move through the city streets with a quiet awareness of the sharp contrast between the lives of ordinary citizens and the elite who reside behind high walls. Priests glide along the avenues in flowing robes, their sandals clicking softly against polished stone, carrying symbols of authority and ritual. Kings, meanwhile, dwell in cool, shadowed chambers, their bodies cushioned on mats and cushions, scented oils softening the air around them. The luxury seems almost surreal compared to the dusty, sun-baked labor of the streets. Yet there is a rhythm here too, a subtle balance of power, wealth, and tradition. Historians still argue how much of this comfort was truly deserved and how much relied on careful political theater. But to you, the difference is palpable. You pass a palace courtyard, noticing bronze vessels glinting in the soft sunlight, filled with fragrant oils and water drawn from distant canals. Musicians play gentle tunes on harps, the notes drifting lazily in the warm air. You can almost feel the plush cushions under your own imagined body and the smooth texture of silk tunics brushing against your skin. Gentle humor nudges you. It seems almost unfair that anyone could smell this nice while you're trudging through the dust and reeds of the market square. But you suppress the thought with a soft sigh, realizing that envy would only weigh you down. Inside the temple quarters, priests prepare ceremonial meals for the gods, arranging dates, barley, and honey in patterns that reflect both devotion and aesthetic taste. You observe the precision and care, noting how every gesture is rehearsed and deliberate. Even the act of serving food becomes an art, a reflection of status and ritual. The contrast to the simple porridge and bread of ordinary households is striking. Yet in their meticulous routines, you sense echoes of the same rhythm that structures every corner of Mesopotamian life: discipline and attention to detail. From a balcony, you watch the evening light illuminate the palace gardens. Soft fountains trickle water into shallow basins, their sounds blending with the distant murmur of city life. Fragrant flowers sway gently in the breeze, and birds perched along the walls chirped faintly. You notice the luxury of leisure in every detail: the silk curtains, polished stone floors, scented oils, and attentive servants. Gentle sarcasm surfaces again. The kings might have all the comfort, but they also have advisors, taxes, and the constant scrutiny of scribes. Every form of luxury carries its subtle weight. The elite lifestyle extends to clothing, adornments, and personal grooming. Priests wear finely woven tunics, intricate jewelry, and meticulously styled hair. Kings, when they move among the populace, are dressed to convey both power and divine favor, their appearance a statement of authority and privilege. Meanwhile, the ordinary citizen's linen tunic is rough, dyed with plant-based colors that fade quickly, and your sandals are patched with reed and hope. The disparity is stark, yet woven seamlessly into the city's structure. Historians still debate whether the ordinary citizen ever truly envied the elite, or whether these differences were simply accepted as the natural order. Evening rituals among the elite are a quiet spectacle. Scented lamps flicker in the hallways, music drifts softly through corridors, and servants move with careful precision. You can almost imagine yourself reclining on a low cushion, sipping warm barley wine, and listening to harp music while the city hums faintly beyond the walls. There is a soothing rhythm here, different from the sun-baked streets, but equally hypnotic in its repetition and grace. Gentle humor bubbles to the surface again. Perhaps, you think, being pampered requires a sort of stamina, as well one of etiquette, patience, and the ability to listen politely to endless advice. As night deepens, the contrast becomes more apparent yet less jarring. From the palace, soft light spills into the streets below, illuminating the paths of laborers returning home. The small fires of household lamps, and the distant shimmer of the elite's luxury does not diminish the city's pulse. Rather, it completes it, forming a spectrum of existence where comfort, toil, ritual, and survival are interconnected. You breathe slowly, feeling the gentle cadence of life here, understanding that even in disparity, there is a strange, soothing balance, one that has allowed Mesopotamia to thrive quietly for centuries. You bend over a neatly woven reed basket, feeling the smooth stiffness of fresh reeds beneath your fingertips. These humble creations, while unassuming, are the lifelines of Mesopotamian survival. You imagine carrying grain from the river's edge to your home. Each basket balanced with care, reeds gently creaking under the weight. It's remarkable, you think, how such a simple tool can transform labor from unbearable to manageable. Gentle humor nudges you. If only modern shopping carts had this kind of elegance or durability, for that matter. Historians still argue exactly how widely these baskets were used beyond urban centers. But to you, their ingenuity feels universal and timeless. Clay seals offer another quiet marvel. You watch a scribe press a small cylinder into soft clay. leaving a spiraling impression of symbols that identify ownership, trade agreements, or the authority of a temple or merchant. Each seal is unique, a signature before signatures existed. You run your fingers lightly over the impressions, imagining the countless exchanges they've secured, the disputes they've quietly resolved. The tactile satisfaction of a smooth seal pressed into clay is subtle but profound, a connection to human creativity and precision that transcends time. You can't help but smile at the thought that this tiny cylinder might have caused more headaches for ancient lawyers than any modern contract ever has. Irrigation, canals, are your next focus, the arteries that sustain fields and orchards alike. Water flows steadily, channeled with careful engineering to reach crops in a region where rainfall is unreliable. You follow the gentle murmur of flowing water, noticing how its rhythm mirrors the slow cadence of daily life. Without these canals, the city would falter, its people dependent entirely on the whims of the Tigris and Euphrates. Gentle humor creeps in again. You wonder if the rivers themselves ever laugh at human attempts to tame them. Scholars still debate how early engineers determined the precise gradients and widths of canals, yet the results speak for themselves in a quiet, reliable magic. You pause at the edge of a field, observing workers tending to crops with small hoes and baskets, the earth yielding slowly under human hands. Every furrow, every carefully planted seed is a testament to ingenuity and perseverance. Even the simplest reed basket, pressed clay seal, or diverted canal becomes a lifeline in this environment. You inhale the scent of tilled soil, warm from the sun, and notice how it mingles with faint traces of animal life and drying mud. It's a sensory symphony, grounding you in the tactile reality of survival by mid-afternoon. The rhythm of these survival hacks becomes hypnotic. You watch a farmer use a simple pulley to lift water from a canal, imagining the repeated motion over weeks and months. Children mimic these motions in small games, unaware they are rehearsing skills vital to their future. You chuckle softly at the innocence of imitation, remembering that even the most mundane chores contain lessons in balance, dexterity, and patience. Historians still debate the exact origins of some Mesopotamian innovations, but their impact is evident everywhere, from homes to temples, from markets to fields, as the sun dips lower. You notice how the interplay of labor and invention shapes life in subtle ways. Clay jars, reed mats, canals, and baskets each, seemingly small supports, the grand architecture, commerce, and culture of the city. You feel the soft satisfaction of observing human ingenuity at work, a quiet reminder that even in toil there is grace. Gentle sarcasm returns. Perhaps the ancient Mesopotamians deserve medals for basket weaving alone, though likely no one would ever know. Night approaches, and the canals glint under the fading sunlight, the water reflecting gold and rose. The day's work slows, baskets are emptied, tools stowed, and the subtle innovations of survival rest alongside their makers. You pause for a moment, feeling the rhythm of the city seep into your own body, gentle, meditative cadence of human labor, clever solutions, and enduring resilience. It's soothing in a way that seems almost magical, that life, with all its challenges, can still produce beauty, order, and soft wonder. You walk along the edge of the city walls, the mud brick ramparts warm beneath your hands, the horizon stretching wide and hazy under the late afternoon sun. From here, you can see the patchwork of fields, canals, and neighboring city-states, each one a potential rival or ally. Life in Mesopotamia is never entirely peaceful. City-states like your Uruk and Lagash have their own armies, walls, and ambitions, and skirmishes can flare unexpectedly. You imagine the tension that hums beneath every conversation in the market, every exchange of barley, every council meeting behind palace doors. Gentle humor whispers. You can almost hear a Mesopotamian soldier grumbling, "Did I sign up for this, or just for barley duty?" The city's defense relies on vigilance, discipline, and clever strategy. Guards patrol in bronze helmets and leather tunics, their sandals echoing softly on the stone floors of watchtowers. You notice the arrow slits along the walls and the wooden gates reinforced with heavy beams, and you feel the subtle weight of protection and threat mingling in the air. Historians still argue how frequent large-scale conflicts truly were, but the threat of raids, ambushes, or territorial disputes shaped everyday life. A quiet drumbeat beneath the rhythm of the city. From a distance, you observe messengers riding swiftly along dirt paths, delivering urgent news from one city-state to another. The riders' hooves kick up clouds of dust, the faint neighing of horses carrying both anxiety and authority. Traders and farmers pause to watch the riders pass, aware that alliances shift as unpredictably as the rivers themselves. Gentle sarcasm surfaces. Perhaps the messenger's only constant is exhaustion, galloping endlessly while everyone else debates whose territory is whose. In the fields, farmers continue their work, yet even here the echoes of war linger. Irrigation canals can become strategic points, bridges over rivers contested, and fields vulnerable to pillage. You watch workers glance nervously toward distant hills, aware of the fragility of peace. The tension is subtle but ever present, like a low hum that threads through the daily rhythm. Small children, playing with clay soldiers or toy chariots, mimic the conflicts of the adults, their laughter a delicate counterpoint to the serious undertones of city defense. Inside the city, meetings take place quietly behind fortified walls. Leaders discuss alliances, negotiate boundaries, and plan for potential sieges. You imagine the soft shuffle of papers, the careful phrasing of speeches, the subtle persuasion required to maintain fragile coalitions. Gentle humor nudges your thoughts again. You can picture a weary advisor whispering, "Next time, can we just swap barley instead of waging war?" Historians still debate how binding these alliances were, or how often treaties were broken for convenience. But the patterns of diplomacy are as vital as any physical defense. Evening casts long shadows over the battlements, and you notice a faint glimmer of torches on neighboring walls. Quiet reminder that vigilance never truly sleeps. Soldiers settle into routines, checking weapons, maintaining gates, and listening for distant signals, while citizens continue the slower, necessary work of life, cooking, weaving, and caring for children. You sense a dual rhythm here, the immediate tension of defense intertwined with the soft, persistent cadence of ordinary survival. Night finally arrives, and the city seems to breathe in a collective sigh. The walls stand tall and silent, a protective cocoon over lives interwoven with labor, law, and occasional conflict. From the battlements, you can see the faint outlines of neighboring settlements under the starry sky. Peaceful for now, but full of potential stories of struggle and resilience. Gentle humor drifts one last time through your thoughts. Even if you wouldn't last a day here in battle, you can at least appreciate the mesmerizing pattern of human ingenuity, courage, and quiet preparation that keeps life moving forward. Asterisk, you stroll through the bustling market, the sun dipping lower and casting long shadows across the stalls. Barley, the lifeblood of Mesopotamian trade, is stacked neatly in clay jars and woven baskets, its golden grains catching the last light of the day. Merchants haggle softly, their voices a steady hum in the background, negotiating the exchange of goods both near and far. You handle a small pouch of barley, feeling its weight, and imagine how this simple grain functions as both sustenance and currency. Gentle humor surfaces. You wonder if anyone ever tried paying a debt with a handful of sand by accident, and how that might have gone over. Historians still argue whether barter or standardized measures dominated trade in early Mesopotamia, but the impact on daily life is undeniable. You notice traders arriving from distant regions, their donkeys laden with copper, tin, and exotic fabrics. The scents of spices and dried fruits mingle with the earthy aroma of barley and wet clay. Each trader carries knowledge, gossip, and a little unpredictability, keeping the rhythm of commerce alive and occasionally chaotic. Gentle sarcasm drifts into your thoughts. One can only imagine the frustration of counting barley sacks after a long journey over rough terrain. The economy, it seems, depends on patience, precision, and perhaps a dash of luck. The city's economy is deeply interconnected. Artisans craft pottery and metal tools, scribes record transactions, and merchants ensure that goods move along long-distance routes connecting cities near and far. You watch a scribe carefully inscribe the contents of a shipment onto a clay tablet, pressing each symbol with deliberate care. These tiny marks carry enormous weight, transforming the ordinary exchange of goods into an enduring record. You smile softly at the thought that this early accounting system may have caused more headaches than the most complex modern spreadsheets. Barley flows into the city not only as payment but as sustenance. Workers receive portions for labor, temples store reserves for festivals, and families trade it for fish, vegetables, or utensils. You imagine the quiet satisfaction of a successful trade, the merchant, the farmer, the scribe, all connected through these golden grains. Historians still debate how standardized measurements were enforced, yet the system's subtle efficiency is evident in the city's pulse. A rhythm both soft and precise, beyond the city walls. Trade routes stretch across rivers, deserts, and hills. Caravans move slowly, laden with goods, their paths marked by experience and instinct. You watch a caravan rest near a canal, animals drinking, merchants adjusting sacks and mats. Gentle humor drifts in again. One misstep, a spilled jar, and a week-long journey could end in chaos or laughter, depending on perspective. The soft cadence of preparation, negotiation, and careful movement underscores the subtle artistry of commerce in a world without modern conveniences. By evening, the city quiets, but the market's influence persists. Barley stocks are counted, ledgers updated, and merchants prepare for tomorrow's exchange. You pause to admire the interconnectedness of it, or the ingenuity of standardized trade, the tactile satisfaction of a balanced ledger, and the way goods and grains flow like water through a living, breathing system. It's a rhythm you can almost feel beneath your own skin, soft, repetitive, and deeply comforting. Night falls fully, and lanterns flicker across the quieting stalls. The scent of barley mingles with oil lamps, clay, and the faint trace of distant rivers. You take a deep breath, feeling the city's pulse slow alongside your own. Even in complexity, there is elegance. The soft, enduring patterns of trade, work, and economy in Mesopotamia echo across centuries, reminding you that human ingenuity, patience, and rhythm can sustain civilizations quietly and gracefully, quietly and gracefully. You wander into a quieter part of the city, where the sounds of daily labor fade into the soft, melodic hum of cultural expression. A harp's strings quiver gently in a courtyard, the notes resonating softly against sun-warmed walls. Children practice simple songs, their laughter mingling with the delicate music, creating a sensory tapestry that feels both intimate and eternal. Poems like the Epic of Gilgamesh are recited in hushed tones by scribes, their cadence weaving myth into memory. Gentle humor drifts through your thoughts. Imagine reciting tales of gods and monsters. After a day hauling grain, you might get the occasional raised eyebrow or polite snicker. Historians still debate how widely these stories were performed versus read, but their cultural presence is undeniable. Board games, simple yet captivating, occupy another corner of city life. You watch two boys hunch over a clay board, moving small pieces with careful deliberation. The game is familiar, ancient, and a quiet lesson in strategy and patience. Even amid the unrelenting rhythm of survival, these moments of recreation offer a soft, hypnotic counterpoint, a gentle reminder that human creativity and playfulness persist regardless of circumstance. You notice the tactile satisfaction of moving the clay pieces, imagining how small gestures can carry the weight of fun, learning, and community. Artistic expression is woven seamlessly into daily existence. Pottery is shaped with both utility and beauty in mind. Reliefs and carvings depict scenes of gods, animals, and heroic feats, and simple murals bring color and life to plain walls. You trace your fingers lightly over a clay tablet adorned with stylized figures, marveling at the balance between practicality and artistry. Gentle sarcasm surfaces. Someone had to be proud enough to say, "Yes, I will spend my afternoon drawing this goat in exquisite detail," while still knowing it might end up buried under barley. Historians still debate how much ordinary citizens influence these artworks versus the elite patrons, but the charm and skill are evident in every etched line. Music is a pervasive comfort. Harps, flutes, and percussion accompany religious ceremonies, market gatherings, and household rituals. You pause to listen to a harpist pluck strings with soft precision, the notes floating lazily into the warm air. The rhythm is gentle, soothing, almost hypnotic, like the pulse of a city breathing in unison. It reminds you that even in toil, humans have always sought harmony, resonance, and soft beauty. You smile gently, imagining a harpist tuning their instrument after a long day of walking across sun-baked streets and weaving reeds into baskets. Street performers add another layer to the city's cultural rhythm. Dancers, storytellers, and jesters entertain passers-by, their movements precise, gestures expressive. You watch a performer mimic the antics of a stubborn goat, drawing soft laughter from children and adults alike. Gentle humor emerges naturally. Perhaps it's the earliest form of slapstick comedy, or perhaps it's just timeless human amusement. Scholars still argue how widely these performances spread across social classes, but the joy they bring seems universal, a gentle thread woven into Mesopotamia's daily fabric. Evening deepens, and the city's cultural pulse softens, but doesn't fade. Music drifts from homes. Children whisper verses of epic tales to one another, and artisans finish delicate details on clay tablets and pottery. You sense a subtle continuity, every note, word, and brushstroke contributing to a living record of human imagination. Gentle sarcasm whispers, even after surviving sun, labor, and floods. The Mesopotamians managed to find time to make life beautiful, which is both admirable and slightly exhausting to contemplate. Night settles softly, and the hum of culture fades into quiet reflection. You feel a calm wash over you as the city sleeps, the harp's echo lingering faintly in your mind. In Mesopotamia, even amid toil and danger, art, music, and games create a gentle, enduring rhythm, an intimate lullaby woven through the city's pulse. The sensory harmony of life here, with its blend of work, play, and beauty, offers a soft meditation on creativity and the subtle joys that shape civilization, carrying through centuries like whispers in the wind. Asterisk, the wheel sits before you like a quiet revolution, small yet transformative. You trace your fingers along its smooth, worn rim, imagining the countless hands that have touched it, the carts pulled over sun-baked roads, and the clay jars balanced carefully atop wooden platforms. Simple, elegant, and profoundly practical, the wheel carries more than goods. It carries the pulse of Mesopotamian innovation. Gentle humor drifts through your thoughts. Perhaps the first person to suggest round logs under stuff didn't realize they were changing history or giving themselves a permanent job moving heavy things. Historians still argue who truly invented the wheel, but its presence is undeniable, a subtle cadence embedded in daily life nearby. A scribe works on a clay tablet, pressing stylus marks into soft clay. Cuneiform, the earliest form of writing, unfurls beneath his hands a script of careful wedges that records trade, law, and stories. You run your fingers along a completed tablet, feeling the indentations that immortalize human thought. Each mark is a link in a chain, connecting you to centuries of communication and memory. Gentle sarcasm surfaces. It must have been a relief when someone invented a stylus, instead of scratching messages into mud with sticks, which seems slightly ambitious and messy. Scholars still debate how literacy spread across social classes, but the rhythm of written communication shapes the city as palpably as the flow of water. In the canals, bronze tools gleam in the late sun. Chisels, axes, and knives polished and ready for use. You lift one carefully, noting the weight and balance, imagining how it transforms labor into a more precise and efficient rhythm. Farmers, carpenters, and artisans alike rely on these tools, each strike echoing softly against mud brick walls or stone foundations. Gentle humor creeps back in, one misplaced swing, and a perfectly useful tool could become a very expensive paperweight or, worse, a temporary headache. Historians still debate how quickly bronze replaced stone in daily tools, but the practical advantage is unmistakable. You wander through workshops where artisans mix copper and tin, melting them slowly to craft blades and vessels. The soft hiss of heated metal, the rhythmic hammering on anvils, and the faint scent of molten bronze create a hypnotic environment. You notice the artistry embedded in each piece, the subtle attention to balance, weight, and detail. Even in functional objects, there is elegance and a quiet celebration of human ingenuity. Gentle sarcasm surfaces again. Mesopotamians clearly had an appreciation for style. Even if your own clay pot ends up slightly lopsided, the city itself feels alive with innovation. Water wheels move grain, reed baskets carry harvests, clay seals track trade, and roads lined with wheel marks connect settlements near and far. Every day is a dance between invention and necessity, labor and comfort, rhythm and efficiency. You pause to imagine the cumulative effect, centuries of innovation creating the foundations for civilization, subtly, persistently, and with astonishing grace. Evening light softens the streets, casting golden hues across mud brick walls and glinting off bronze tools. You feel a gentle satisfaction, a meditative awareness of how human ingenuity transforms challenge into rhythm, toil into accomplishment. Gentle humor nudges you one last time. Perhaps the real heroes of Mesopotamia weren't kings or priests, but the people quietly inventing, building, and perfecting the little things that keep life moving. Night settles, and the glow of oil lamps illuminates workshops and homes alike. You inhale the faint metallic temps of bronze mingling with the earthy aroma of clay and baked grain. The innovation's wheels, cuneiform, bronze tools are more than objects. They are the soft heartbeat of progress, a soothing reminder that human creativity has always been a gentle, persistent force, quietly shaping life and civilization. The sun dips low, casting a soft amber glow across the city as you pause to reflect on the lasting footprints of Mesopotamia. Foundations of law, writing, and urban life stretch out before you, tangible and quiet, yet infinitely profound. You trace your fingers along the edge of a clay tablet, feeling the grooves of cuneiform and imagining the countless hands that pressed these symbols over generations. Every mark, every careful wedge, embodies human intention and memory. Gentle humor creeps in. It's remarkable that something so small could outlast entire empires, while your own messy notes disappear in seconds. Historians still debate the extent to which these early systems influenced distant civilizations, but their presence is undeniable. You stroll past a partially restored city wall, imagining the craftsmen who built it brick by brick, the planners who mapped out streets, and the families who depended on its protection. The rhythm of urban life markets, homes, temples, and workshops feels almost musical in its consistency. You notice how irrigation, canals, city gates, and temples interlock seamlessly with daily routines, a soft choreography of human ingenuity and adaptation. Gentle sarcasm surfaces. Some city planners clearly never had to chase a runaway goat through narrow alleys, yet they crafted a system that endures across millennia. As you wander, you pause at the edge of a small household, observing women balancing bowls of grain, guiding children, and maintaining a rhythm that seems both invisible and indispensable. The labor of ordinary people has quietly shaped history, the subtle pulse of survival and care supporting grander achievements. You inhale the warm, earthy scent of baked clay and wheat, and notice how these everyday smells carry the weight of continuity, a sensory bridge between past and present. Historians still argue about the influence of common citizens versus rulers, but the evidence of their resilience and ingenuity is clear. Even to the casual observer, the fading light touches a distant ziggurat, reminding you of ritual, devotion, and the pursuit of meaning that intertwined with daily labor. You imagine priests moving carefully through oil-lit corridors, musicians plucking harps, and scribes recording stories that echo through centuries. Gentle humor surfaces again. It seems almost unfair that humans could manage wars, floods, and grain shortages while still producing art and poetry, yet somehow they did. The soft cadence of these activities, ritual music, writing lingers in the air, a gentle lullaby of civilization's enduring heartbeat. You pause by a marketplace, recalling the long-distance trade routes that carried barley, tin, copper, and rare fabrics, across deserts and rivers. Merchants, scribes, and farmers all participated in a network of quiet genius, ensuring survival, prosperity, and cultural continuity. Gentle sarcasm drifts in. The first accountants probably had migraines worse than ours, yet they left behind systems that scholars still marvel at today. The rhythm of trade, like the gentle flow of water in the canals, connects people across space and time, a subtle reminder that civilization is not built by kings alone, but by the steady persistence of many. As night finally settles, the city hums softly under the starry sky. You breathe in the cool, fragrant air, filled with faint traces of incense, baked bread, and fertile soil. The legacies of law, writing, trade, and urban planning remain quiet yet enduring, like the soft echo of a lullaby. Gentle humor and quiet awe mingle in your mind. The ancient Mesopotamians, with all their toil, cleverness, and occasional absurdity, have left a rhythm that continues to soothe, teach, and inspire. In their persistence, you feel a calm reassurance, a soft connection to the continuity of human life. Asterisk. The night deepens, and you find yourself reflecting on the subtler aspects of Mesopotamian life. The tiny innovations and social rhythms that allowed civilization to endure. The city, now quiet, still hums with the residual energy of centuries of labor, devotion, and human ingenuity. You notice the faint glimmer of lamps through windows, the slow sway of laundry drying in gentle night breezes, and the distant murmur of the Tigris and Euphrates whispering secrets to each other. Gentle humor drifts in. You imagine someone, somewhere, arguing over who gets the last clay tablet of barley accounts, centuries before spreadsheets existed. Historians still debate how ordinary people perceived their own role in the shaping of history, but the subtle impact of daily life is undeniable. You wander to the banks of the river, feeling the cool touch of mud under your feet, the soft, rhythmic splash of water soothing in the dim light. You observe the reflection of moonlight on the rippling surface, imagining the countless boats that once ferried grain, goods, and people along these vital arteries. The flow of water mirrors the flow of life itself, continuous, steady, and essential. Gentle sarcasm surfaces. The first boatman probably muttered complaints about soggy cargo long before anyone coined the term logistics nightmare. Yet, in this soft cadence of labor and necessity, you sense a timeless elegance. Small fires, the city as households prepare for sleep. You hear the faint crackle of flames in hearths and smell the lingering aroma of baked bread, barley porridge, and faint incense. Women tend to children, whispering stories and smoothing hair, while elders recount small tales of past seasons and distant neighbors. You feel the soothing intimacy of these quiet moments, the subtle threads of care, instruction, and tradition binding families and neighborhoods. Historians still debate how widely oral traditions were preserved versus written records, but their influence resonates clearly in the soft rhythm of nightly routines. In the dim light of lanterns, you notice the final movement of artisans, scribes, and farmers completing their day. A pot is polished, a clay tablet pressed, a reed basket repaired. Each action, though small, reinforces the continuity of life and culture. You sense the quiet harmony in this shared labor, the gentle music of persistence that has carried the city through floods, wars, and droughts. Gentle humor drifts again. It must have been simultaneously exhausting and satisfying to keep such a delicate balance, like walking a tightrope over barley fields, looking skyward. The constellations shine clearly, unchanged by the millennia. You imagine the same stars, watched by ancient farmers, priests, and children, guiding planting cycles, rituals, and bedtime stories. The cosmos itself feels woven into the city's rhythm, a quiet partner in the daily and seasonal cadences. You breathe slowly, letting the soft murmur of the river, the faint laughter of children settling down, and the whispering wind through reeds lull your mind. As sleep approaches, the city's heartbeat slows but does not vanish. The innovations, laws, trade networks, rituals, and artistry of Mesopotamia persist invisibly, shaping lives in subtle, profound ways. Gentle sarcasm surfaces one final time. Even if you couldn't survive a day in the scorching sun or carry a basket of barley without complaint, you can still admire the elegance, resilience, and quiet genius of a civilization that endured against the odds. The cool night air brushes softly against your skin as you wander the streets, now dimly lit by the faint glow of oil lamps. The city seems suspended between rest and quiet anticipation, a gentle rhythm maintained by the invisible hands of countless ordinary people. You pause at a small workshop where an artisan polishes bronze tools, the faint metallic scent mingling with warm clay from nearby pottery. You notice the deliberate care in each movement, the same precision that has allowed this civilization to thrive across centuries. Gentle humor drifts in. It's humbling to think someone got paid to hammer bronze for a living and probably grumbled just like anyone else, yet left a legacy lasting millennia. Historians still debate how widespread such specialized labor really was, but the evidence of skill is undeniable. Nearby, a scribe traces wedges into clay, capturing stories, laws, and economic transactions. You watch as the rhythmic tapping of the stylus creates a quiet, hypnotic cadence, a soft echo of human thought preserved through time. The patterns are repetitive, yet comforting, a reminder that innovation and creativity often emerge from patience and meticulous effort. Gentle sarcasm drifts into your thoughts. Imagine someone nagging, "Do you really need to inscribe every single goat that crosses the bridge?" And yet, here it is, immortalized in clay for thousands of years. Beyond the workshops, the city's layout itself tells a story of thoughtful planning and ingenuity. Streets wind gently between homes, temples, and markets, while canals thread through the urban fabric like veins carrying sustenance and life. You follow the water's reflective surface, noting how the city adapts gracefully to both flood and drought. Gentle humor surfaces again. The engineers clearly never met a cat in a hurry, yet somehow the canals survived centuries of curiosity and chaos. Historians still argue about the exact engineering methods used, but the practical and aesthetic harmony of the city is undeniable. In the quieter corners, you hear children playing board games, the soft clatter of pieces punctuating the calm night. Musicians tune harps, the delicate resonance floating through the streets, while women tend to lamps and prepare small offerings for household altars. You notice the subtle interplay of survival, creativity, and devotion, a rhythm that sustains both body and spirit. Gentle sarcasm drifts. It seems unfair that humans manage to weave artistry, labor, and ritual together while some of us today struggle to balance breakfast and email. You pause atop a low wall to watch the stars glimmer against the night sky, the same constellations that guided farmers, sailors, and priests for generations. The universe itself seems quietly aligned with the city's rhythm, a cosmic counterpoint to human innovation, labor, and culture. You feel a deep sense of continuity, as if every basket woven, seal impressed, and tool forged resonates in the soft pulse of the cosmos. Historians still debate how much celestial observation influenced daily life versus ritual, but the stars' serene constancy is undeniable. Night fully embraces the city, and you feel the gentle cadence of life slowing. The innovations, arts, and daily routines of Mesopotamia persist invisibly in the air and streets, a soft, enduring hum. Even as sleep draws near, you sense the elegance of a civilization built on persistence, creativity, and quiet ingenuity. Gentle humor surfaces one last time. Surviving a single day here might be impossible, but witnessing the intricate rhythm of their lives is infinitely soothing and humbling. The city is hushed now, wrapped in the deep velvet of night, yet the echoes of Mesopotamian life linger softly in the air. You walk slowly through streets lined with mud brick homes, listening to the faint murmur of distant rivers, the soft shuffle of animals settling for the night, and the quiet rustle of reed mats as families prepare to sleep. Foundations of law, writing, and urban planning remain visible everywhere in tablets pressed with cuneiform. City walls standing tall, and irrigation canals flowing steadily. Each element is a subtle testament to human ingenuity and endurance. Gentle humor drifts in. It seems almost ironic that these ancient systems still outlast some modern bureaucracy. Historians still argue about the degree to which these innovations shaped neighboring civilizations, but their influence is undeniably enduring. You pause by a temple, the silhouette of the ziggurat outlined against the starlit sky. The faint scent of incense lingers, carrying a memory of rituals performed over generations. Priests and scribes have long gone to rest, yet the rhythm of devotion persists invisibly in the air. You run your fingers lightly along a low wall, feeling the warmth that the sun stored in the bricks, and imagine the countless ceremonies, prayers, and offerings that shaped the spiritual and social life of the city. Gentle sarcasm whispers, even if you couldn't survive the long sun-baked days, you can at least enjoy the afterglow of their rituals. The marketplace, now silent, still resonates with the memory of trade. Barley, tin, copper, and clay jars once moved through these streets, guided by merchants, scribes, and farmers. Each transaction left an imprint, not only on clay tablets, but on the rhythm of life itself. You sense the invisible connections threading through homes, temples, and fields, a network of human effort, ingenuity, and routine that continues to pulse softly even in the night. Gentle humor surfaces. Someone, somewhere, probably sighed over counting grains, yet their diligence built a civilization that still whispers to us today. Art, music, and storytelling complete the city's invisible web. You imagine harp strings vibrating in warm evening air, children reciting lines from the Epic of Gilgamesh, and artisans finishing delicate touches on pottery. These creative expressions are interwoven with survival, labor, and devotion, a seamless rhythm that defines Mesopotamia's heartbeat. Gentle sarcasm drifts in. It's impressive that they balanced all this while trying not to drown in floods or be trampled by donkeys. Historians still debate the full social reach of art and storytelling, yet their soft echo persists across millennia. As you walk along the riverbank, the gentle flow of water mirrors the continuity of life itself. You watch as the moonlight shimmers across the ripples, reflecting the enduring patterns of agriculture, trade, law, and culture. The city, its innovations, and its people, both elite and ordinary, have left a legacy that pulses softly beneath the surface. A quiet reminder of the resilience and creativity that define civilization. Gentle humor nudges you one final time. Perhaps you wouldn't last a day here under the sun, the labor and the heat, but you can still marvel at the ingenuity, rhythm and beauty that allowed humans to thrive, persist, and leave a legacy of subtle wonder. Night fully settles. The city sleeps, yet its heartbeat continues, echoing through the stars, the rivers, and the quiet air. You inhale deeply, feeling the soft cadence of life in Mesopotamia wrap around you like a warm, comforting blanket. The innovations, routines, and stories of this ancient civilization whisper gently across time, reminding you that even in toil, struggle, and fleeting human moments, there is beauty, rhythm, and enduring ingenuity. The city now rests under a sky full of stars, and you feel the slow, comforting rhythm of Mesopotamian life settle around you like a soft blanket. The canals murmur quietly, reflecting moonlight and the faint echoes of footsteps that have long since faded. You breathe in the cool night air, fragrant with baked grain, warm clay, and distant incense, letting it wash gently over your senses. All the innovations, stories, and rituals you've observed, the wheels, cuneiform, harp music, and whispered prayers linger softly in your mind, like distant lullabies from another age. You think of the farmers carefully tending their crops, the scribes inscribing wedges into clay, the artisans shaping bronze tools, and the children playing simple games. Each action, though small, contributed to a rhythm that carried life through the scorching sun. City conflicts and unpredictable floods. Even the elite, with their silk robes and cushioned chambers, moved in this same subtle cadence, each gesture tied to the pulse of survival and culture. Gentle humor drifts through your thoughts, somehow. Humans manage to balance work, play, ritual, and innovation, and yet we still complain about WI-Phi. The legacy of Mesopotamia stretches quietly across the ages, invisible yet enduring. Laws carved in stone, trade routes etched across the land, and stories woven into memory remind you that human ingenuity and perseverance have always been at the heart of civilization. You feel a soft awe for the ordinary people whose daily actions, baking, weaving, ferrying grain, or simply telling stories formed the backbone of history. Even when life was harsh, the rhythm of work, invention, and care created continuity, beauty, and subtle order. As your own eyelids grow heavy, the city's soft pulse blends with your breathing. The lamps flicker faintly in your imagination. The gentle flow of the rivers lulls your mind, and the distant harp strings echo softly in the corners of your thoughts. You sense the enduring heartbeat of a civilization that, though long gone, continues to teach, soothe, and inspire. Gentle humor lingers one final time. You probably wouldn't last a day under that blazing sun or hauling baskets of barley. Yet you can drift to sleep knowing that the rhythm of life carries on. Quietly, gracefully, and endlessly. Slow your breathing. Let the cool night air settle into your body and feel the calm. Measured cadence of Mesopotamian life wrap around you. Every innovation, every ritual, every small, unremarkable act of daily survival forms a gentle, timeless hum. Let it soothe your mind, ease your thoughts, and carry you softly towards sleep.